Hey, buddy. What's got you so down?
Hey, Court. I'm looking for a gift, but I just don't know what to get my Gettys nerd friends and family.
It sounds like we need to have a talk. Come on. You love this place, don't you?
You bet I do. It's my favorite place in the world.
Well, you see, at Addressing Gettysburg, it's our mission to keep these stories alive.
How do we do that?
I'm glad you asked, sport. You see, Gettysburg is the gateway to the most brutal and crucial time in American history, so we interview experts, and our listeners learn with us.
That sounds amazing.
It is! Mike, are you f***ing serious?
What? It's for the commercial. What benefits do patrons get?
You mean besides up to 4 premium episodes per month and Matt being the bee's knees as host? How about early access to special episodes, behind-the-scenes insights, and discounts for ticketed events?
Whoa! None of the other history channels I follow do that for their listeners.
That's because Addressing Gettysburg doesn't take its listeners for granted and really cares about us learning American history.
You know, I should gift my Gettys nerd friends and family an Addressing Gettysburg Patreon membership.
You see, the answer was right under your nose the entire time.
Make Addressing Gettysburg's Patreon a gift for the Gettys nerd in your family this holiday season. Addressing Gettysburg wants you to learn about the Civil War with us, and we need your support. We'll run this ad until it gets annoying, and then we'll run it until you become a patron at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg or by scanning the QR code on your screen. Happy holidays.
The hell are we staring at?
No idea.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this special America250 edition of Addressing Gettysburg's Ask a Valley Forge Guide. And today is a guy who you're going to be seeing more of in the coming weeks on the Addressing Gettysburg and soon to be Addressing History YouTube channel. And that is our friend Ken Gavin. Welcome, Ken, to your first Ask a Guide.
Matt, thanks very much. Glad to be back once again and to have infiltrated the canon.
Yes.
Of Ask a Guide. My other appearances were, I guess, the testing ground.
That was your yes, exactly. That was your boot camp, and now here you are on a live stream, free for all to see, not hidden behind a paywall, held hostage, history held hostage, as some might say. But no, here you are for everybody to enjoy. A couple of things I want to tell you all about. One, our good, dear, great friend, Michael 6 Questions Lens, finally has his date for the guide exam. I believe he said it was April 26th. And so I'm very confident that by the end of business on April 26th, the close of business, we will now have licensed battlefield guide, Michael 6 Questions Lens. And I hope it says 6 questions on his license.
And but six means 6, Mike, if you're listening out there. I know you submitted for this. And there were 6 questions numbered, but there were actually 18 or 19. Regardless, we love you. And I know you are going to pass that with flying colors.
Yes.
And we're looking forward to it.
Yes. Now, another thing is something that I have to do. One of our listeners over the winter sent something. There's this postcard here. This postcard is of Punxsutawney Phil, okay? And it says on the back, to the Addressing Gettysburg gang, just in time for Groundhog Day, February 2nd. Matt, this hat is for you from your Punxsutawney fans, Mark and Elise Harmon, also known as Ms. Lisi online. And this is something that they sent in. Now, of course, it's winter, and I'm going to put it on just for a second because we are talking about something that takes place on the icy waters of the Delaware River in December of 1776. And here we are with a groundhog. And this is actually really soft and warm. I might keep this on for a while, actually, now that I think about it. And here it is. So thank you very much, Ms. Lisi. I appreciate that. And there's some, it looks like some Mardi Gras beads in here. Wait, oops, we've lost this thing here. with Punxsutawney Phil on it as well for the rest of the gang. So tomorrow on Patreon, when we do AG Today, we will give that out to everybody else and have some fun with that. So thank you very much for that gift as well. All right, now let's get on to the the matter at hand. Okay, Ken, we're talking about Washington's Crossing. This is the Revolutionary War, not the Civil War. But it is America250. So every once in a while, we're going to dip our toe into other pools. Sometimes, the pool is a little warm. Sometimes the pool is a little cold. Today, the pool is cold, freezing cold, ice cold. Okay. Now, let's start first, if you will, Ken. Give us a little bit of a background. How does Washington get into a position where he's going to have to cross the Delaware into New Jersey from Pennsylvania?
Yep. So it really goes back.
And by the way, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so sorry. 717-420-1978 is the phone number you want to call if you want to talk to Ken later on or throughout the show. I'll take him throughout the show. And of course, super chats of $10 or more get noticed in the comment section. Bear with me because we don't have Court or Mikey B with us here tonight to monitor them. So I'll keep an eye on them. But yes, those will rise above the din and they'll also help to defray the cost of dinner for the crew tonight. So thank you very much for that. And now, Ken, go ahead.
First off, I really would love to see a mashup between the beaver and the new Punxsutawney Phil hat. I think that would be perfect.
The beaver in the park?
The beaver in the park from the commercial and the Punxsutawney Phil hat.
The commercial, Matt, the commercial.
The commercial, the legendary commercial.
Mikey Beaver.
Mikey Beaver.
Yes, got it.
Anyway, you had asked how Washington gets into this position where he's going to need to cross the Delaware from Pennsylvania into New Jersey. And it really goes back to the New York campaign of 1776, what's preceding what's happening in those summer months. I'll go just slightly back further than that because I think context is always helpful. And in case some of our listeners are new to this time period,
let's assume most of us are.
Let's just assume that. So if we think about the outbreak of war in 1775, Lexington and Concord, and the British Army being driven back through the Massachusetts hinterland into the city of Boston itself, that could be deemed a pretty good day for the Patriot cause, right? In fact, most of 1775 and the first half of 1776 go pretty well for the Patriots. If you think about the British having to evacuate Boston in the spring of 1776, you have Patriot victories in the South, at Moores Creek, at Great Bridge in Virginia, and the capture of Fort Ticonderoga. And in addition to military successes that the Patriots are experiencing in 1775, there's a lot of Patriot political success because all of what we consider to be our original 13 colonies have to overthrow the yoke of royal government. And they have to establish their own state governments and state constitutions in 1776. And they all do that. So there's a remarkable string of military and political successes that are happening within the first 16 or so months of the war. When the British are looking at how to suppress rebellion in North America, they're seeing a socio-political situation by the spring of 1776 that's markedly different than what they imagined it to be. From the 1760s onward, Britain looked at unrest in North America and viewed New England, specifically Massachusetts, as the hotbed of all this. But now that they're seeing this groundswell of support from these colonies up and down the eastern seaboard, they decide that they need to bring the hammer down on the anvil hard and fast to try to end this. So the New York campaign is going to be the result of that. In the summer of 1776, that's Britain's efforts to squash the rebellion and to end this in North America. Two brothers will be in charge of that effort. Sir William Howe has the infantry. His brother Richard Howe has the British Navy. And Britain will commit just about half of its global military strength to this invasion of what we call the United States in 1776. New York is a series of islands. If you think about that from a bird's eye view, you have Washington with an army of about 20,000. He has no navy of which to speak, certainly nothing that can match the British. And he's going to try to defend this in the summer and early fall of 1776. The British, what are they going to bring in against Washington's raw recruits who are not well trained, Washington's lack of a navy? Britain will assemble the largest fleet the world has seen since the Spanish Armada in 1588. When Britain invades the United States in 1776, it remains the British Empire's largest amphibious military operation until they assault Gallipoli in the First World War. 30,000 troops, hundreds of ships coming to bear on what we consider the modern five boroughs. And over a series of several months, the British are able to reduce Washington's army by about half, and they're going to hold the city of New York. The British think that they have won at that point in time. The Howes have been given permission by the British Crown to extend certain peace terms to the Americans that will grant them everything just about short of independence. And the peace terms would also grant the Americans clemency, particularly political and military leaders. There would be no one tried for treason if Washington had agreed to surrender and end the rebellion at that point in time.
Do you believe that would have been held to?
I do.
You do?
I do. And the reason I do is when you look at how British military and political leaders view the American rebellion, particularly prior to the entry of France much later in 1778, there was a really conflicted British national consciousness about this war and about waging this war, because the British, who are Whigs of the Whig political tradition, Whig political philosophy, tend to sympathize with American colonists to an extent, as opposed to their Tory brethren, who are a bit more hawkish. And Whigs would look at the situation in North America and say that, yes, the colonists, some of them are very troublesome and they need to be brought into line. But why are we killing these people wholesale? For the most part, they look and sound like us. We share common culture, religion, customs, language, traditions. And we just fought this massive war against France and her allies to make North America our keystone of empirical economic success in the Western Hemisphere, to fuel our global empire. So killing them wholesale may not be the best way to go about this. I do think it would have been held to. And the fact that the Howes have permission from the Crown to extend the terms, I think they would have been respected. But, Washington will refuse, of course, to surrender. And that creates a bit of an issue for the British, because while it's a great victory in New York, clearly the war has not ended. So
you could say that they do have all those things in common, but really the difference is different dreams. Different dreams. If I may quote a British officer,
if you may, from a movie we all know and love.
Yeah.
Sometimes the dreams are different, sometimes they're not. I mean, it really is a very complicated thing. When I look at the early phase of the revolution, there are a lot of colonists who feel that they are protecting their rights as freeborn Englishmen, particularly the wealthier classes of American citizens who are clustered in cities along the eastern seaboard. They're looking back as far as the Magna Carta, the English Civil War, and the Glorious Revolution. And they're saying, English citizens, particularly landed gentry in the old country, and the people who considered themselves landed gentry in the colonies, have certain rights which are being trampled upon. And if you look at somebody like William Allen from Philadelphia in 1775, Allen is very much a supporter of the Patriot cause, goes to war, fights on behalf of the Patriots, but when independence is declared, Allen switches sides. So the dreams sometimes intersect, sometimes do not, but it becomes really complicated in terms of how far certain Americans are willing to go. And of course, there are many who want independence as well, but there's a subset out there that don't. Regardless of all that, at the end of the New York campaign, realizing that Washington is not going to give up, the British will begin to move southward into the state of New Jersey itself. And they're going to push American forces ahead of them as they move south through the state. The British under Howe are going to try a system of pacification as they move through New Jersey. And they're going to begin a system of issuing pardons to people who are willing to sign loyalty oaths to the Crown. So this is really similar, following a theme of the terms of peace they were willing to offer to the army. As the Howes are moving south through New Jersey, they're going to say to local civilians, even those who have known to be supporters of the Patriot cause, if you are willing to sign a loyalty oath to the Crown, then we're going to give you a certificate that protects your personage and it protects your property. There are some estimates out there that over 3,000 loyalty oaths are issued as the British are moving south in the fall of 1776. Meanwhile, Washington is depleting supplies. he is losing men from his army, and it's becoming very clear that the British are pursuing him to try to end the war. So he'll move himself over into Pennsylvania to get a river between him and British forces and to start to think about next steps as we get into, the late fall, what we would consider early winter of 1776.
So you say he's losing men. Is he losing them to disease, to desertion, to enlistments being up? What is it that he's
It's
losing?
a combination of all three.
Okay.
Really, it is. Yeah.
So that river is going to give him some breathing room also, I'm guessing, right? Because
It's a natural barrier that will give him some breathing space between him and the British. But he has to contemplate what he's going to do. That can only buy so much time. And while Washington is contemplating what his next steps might be before the vast majority of the Army's enlistments expire on December 30th and December 31st, the British are continuing to try and occupy the state of New Jersey in early December and mid-December. By the time you get to December 14th, General Howe has had a breakfast meeting in Trenton with several of his subordinate commanders to lay out the plans that he has developed for the occupation of the state of New Jersey that winter.
Okay.
And that plan consists of creating a number of small encampments, cantonments, cantonments, however we want to pronounce that. We've all been there. And it really is, it's a string of outposts that will stretch from the Hudson to the Delaware.
Yeah.
And it's going to be about 300 square miles of space that he's trying to occupy with this force, and keeping a large force in New York City as well. But that's how he's going to try to pacify and occupy the state of New Jersey in the winter of 1776, 1777.
Is the New Jersey that much of a patriot state, or is it more of a loyalist state, or is it mixed?
It's mixed, just like anywhere else would be.
Okay.
There are people who are certainly staunch patriots. There are others who are staunch loyalists. And then there are individuals trying to keep their head down and sometimes flipping sides.
Yeah.
During this time period, you'll even see Richard Stockton, who's a signer of the Declaration of Independence, flip and sign a loyalty oath to the British in an attempt to save himself, an attempt to save his property, his estate at Morven in Princeton.
I did not know that.
And then he'll flip back and sign a loyalty oath to the Patriot cause again later in the war too. But it is an attempt on Howe's part. It's a soft occupation is what he's hoping for, and trying to grant those privileges by means of the certificates that he's offering. He thinks is a way to pacify the civilian population, and then try to bring them under the protection of the British Crown.
So I know The Patriot is one of your favorite movies, The brutality that they show the British enacting upon, I can't think of the word, the Americans, the colonists, is that accurate at any point in the war, but particularly this point in the war? It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like the British are trying to welcome them back with soft, gentle, open arms and say, hey, it's all right, come on.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Matt.
You're welcome.
It's almost as if we planned this, but I promise
we did not.
We did not.
I barely prepared.
Right. So
as usual.
Interestingly, Howe is trying to pacify a population. Howe is taking what I would term sort of a soft approach. But after he lays out these plans for his commanders and has this breakfast meeting in Trenton on December 14th, Howe goes back to New York City, because that's where he's going to spend the winter with that portion of the army, which leaves these strung out encampments. And it does get very brutal in terms of the way the civilian population is treated in a number of places. And there are definite accounts of plundering. Let me just read from the book here for a moment. Let me pull this up, because I flagged a couple of different things that I thought were interesting accounts of either plundering or brutality. And I guess I'll need to break out the spectacles too here for this.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Your first time ever seeing Ken with glasses.
Yeah, they're just readers, but as we advance
starts
in
with
age,
just readers, and they get to be Coke bottle sized.
So.
And then they're just seers.
So, John Mott, who is a local Quaker living in central New Jersey, reports that he was horrified to see one of the Hessians flaying a live cow for meat, a sight so outrageous that even a Quaker got a weapon and fired at the German soldier, and with intent to kill. There is another anecdote that was, I thought, really a good one. Martha Reed, who is a resident of Trenton when the Hessians first occupied the town, she talks about the house being plundered while they're still in it. She has a house at Trenton, and her daughter leaves an account of this later on in life, what had occurred. And the daughter remembers that one cold winter night, mother and we 2 children were gathered in the family room. A great fire blazed in the chimney. Suddenly, there was a noise outside and the sound of many feet. The door opened, and in stalked several strange men, a couple of women who looked like giants and giantesses to us. They were so tall. These were the dreaded Hessians, surely come. They jabbered away in harsh guttural tones, coming to the fire, spreading out their hands to the blaze. We children jumped up screaming and clung to our mother. She was a brave little woman, and standing up, pointed to the door, telling them to get out. They understood the gesture, if not the words, and shook their heads doggedly. As they crouched about the fire, one of the women caught sight of the large silver buckles which mother wore in her shoes, as was the fashion of that time, and made signs for her to take off the shoe. Seeing her hesitate, the woman snatched at the buckle and, pulling off the shoe, rapped my mother in the face with the heel. An officer intervened and rebuked the buckle snatcher. So there are instances like that, and there are instances that are much worse as well. It's not just plunder of civilian property, or it's not just mistreatment of civilians. In those kinds of ways, we see more accounts during this winter occupation in New Jersey of sexual violence and rape than I have seen anywhere else where the British Army campaigns. It got so serious that you have continental state governments who are demanding inquiry into the conduct of the British Army and the Hessian auxiliaries who were there with them in the state of New Jersey. There are at least 40 or 50 accounts that are left. And there are some documents that hint at sexual violence on the part of the British Army in New Jersey, but don't give a lot of information on that because there are people who are not willing to talk about it.
Sure.
But we're talking about things where mothers walking in on daughters being raped, gang rapes on the part of British officers that are taking place during this time period. And civilian population is witnessing this. And what this does is rightfully enrages the citizens of New Jersey.
Sure.
And it creates a scenario that is much different, I think, than what Howe had intended for the winter. And it primes the pump for the population to rise up.
Right.
Right?
You're creating more enemies.
You're creating more enemies. You're creating tension. You're pissing people off.
Damn right you are.
So as we move into later portions of the month of December, there are then several accounts from British soldiers and British officers of it being dangerous to travel anywhere on the roadways because there are either small bands of local New Jersey militia or there are civilians who are not part of any military organization who are laying in wait and trying to pick off men, pick off officers, and then disappearing into the brush. So you have a very tense civilian population. And then you have these British outposts where they're on edge too, because it's hard to move around, right? So that's sort of gives you a general flavor for how things are feeling in New Jersey. Washington on the Pennsylvania side of the river is certainly aware of what's going on. And through a very active espionage network, understands how the British Army has arranged itself in these various encampment posts throughout the state. Washington is marshaling forces. He's going to have what's left of his main Continental Army. And after Major General Charles Lee is captured by the British on December 13th, portions of Lee's army are coming south to join Washington. And Washington is congregating around Newtown, Pennsylvania in Bucks County. And he's considering his move. And by December 23rd, it's becoming very clear in his mind that he's going to make a strike over into New Jersey. And he feels that it's something that he really has to do.
But wait, hold on a second. By December 23rd, it becomes clear that he has to make a strike into New Jersey. And they make this strike starting Christmas night. And it happens in the morning. The attack happens in the morning.
On Christmas night crossing, and then the morning of the 26th will be our first battle of Trenton.
So he decides definitively that he's going to do this by the 23rd. I'm sure the idea was being tossed around
The idea is being tossed around prior. Washington is getting unsolicited advice from staff officers prior to this.
Of course.
There are consultations that are taking place prior to this. But the actual plan of going and which of the outposts in New Jersey they're going to hit by December 23rd, 24th in his brain has been finalized.
That's not a lot of time to pull everything together. So he had to have been pulling things together along this way, right? I mean, it's just that it's like, okay, yeah, no, my mind is made up. This is what we're doing.
He's concentrating force. He's concentrating modes of transportation, namely boats. And he was trying to get boats out of the river as much as he could.
Right.
Because if
He
you
doesn't
leave
want them to use them.
doesn't want the Brits to use them.
Right.
So if you leave the boats out there, your enemy can use them to cross. So
okay, so let's. I want to kind of set the stage here.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the boats along the river, and this is something I was wondering today when I was kind of watching stuff on it.
Yeah.
I would imagine that river community, people along the river, they have boats. They have at least little dinghies or something. And so how much of a boating river was this in the area where he was? How many boats did he have to worry about and try to collect? And
so he's going to want to get everything that he possibly can.
Right.
There are several boats that are going to be on the river for commercial purposes, also transportation purposes. But in addition to boats, there are flat bottom ferries that are going to run as well. And flat bottom ferries are exactly what they sound like. They are flat. If you think about what would look like a really large pallet that has a ramp on either end that will fold up. Those are used on a regular basis to take carriages and horses across the river.
Right.
So he's trying to get as much as he can. He's going to work primarily with Brigadier General William Maxwell and a number of other officers, and they're responsible for collecting boats during this third week of December and basically get everything he can. And as he collects them, he is hiding them behind an island in the Delaware River called Malta Island. Right. And for the crossing itself, I know this was a question that we had from one of the listeners. How many boats were there? And the fact of the matter is we don't have an exact count because nobody wrote that down. But we estimate that there were probably 40 to 60 watercraft of various kinds that were involved in ferrying the Army over on Christmas night. Washington does a really good job of scouring and grabbing all of the boats that he can. We know that because Joseph Galloway, who is a loyalist citizen, is commenting about looking for boats for the British and that he can only find 2. So for most of the boats on the river that are available, we know Washington's grabbing those. And it's not just the Delaware River that he's getting boats from. They're actually getting some boats from the Lehigh River as well. And he's utilizing not just William Maxwell, who's a brigadier general from New Jersey, but local citizens like Captain Daniel Bray, who know the community, who know the people in the community, who know the waterways well. So Washington is doing a good job of using local intelligence from people who actually know the area.
So that brings me to our next question. In the vicinity that Washington is operating on both sides of the river, is he finding mostly sympathetic people or a mix or loyalist, or what does he have to deal with as far as the citizenry's sympathies?
Yeah, it really is a mix, and it's going to be a mix all over the place. It's not as if he's going to run into any state where it's going to be 90% of these people are supportive of the Patriot cause.
Hey, George.
Yeah.
Right, nobody cares.
His big concern is keeping the Army together in these last few weeks until these enlistments expire and making this strike into Pennsylvania. And hopefully it's a successful one.
Yeah.
There are some things at play with that. I mean, it can't be overstated that the revolution is at an extremely low ebb. And from this highest of highs that they're riding in 1775 through a number of political successes and through a number of military successes, New York has really put them on their heels. And it is at a point where if the army disintegrates, or if the British are able to march across the Delaware River if it freezes, and to destroy the Continental Army, perhaps capture the Continental Congress, that our rebellion movement becomes a footnote in British history. It's quickly extinguished like any other rebellion may have.
So I'm wondering, like, are the British thinking this is pretty much over and soon they'll surrender?
I think
not they being Washington.
I think Howe's hope is that he has captured New York. He has a major port city, and I think we've talked about that before. Port cities are hugely important for the British to supply them. It's a tethered umbilical cord. But now that he is working through the pacification of New Jersey, that if the river were to freeze over, he can begin to move troops across and pursue Washington and destroy them. I think that's part of what he wants to do. And if you look at what some of the British and Hessian officers and troops are saying in the days leading up to this first Battle of Trenton, they are convinced that they're only in these locations temporarily, that they're going to march on Philadelphia, that they're waiting for the river to freeze so that they can march across and do that.
So they are waiting for the river to freeze.
Yeah.
That's like definitely, it's like, oh, it's going to freeze and we'll walk over.
And we're going to walk across and we're going to go and we're going to take Philadelphia. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, Washington, when he leaves New York, if I recall, doesn't he split his army in like 3 or something like that? He's got some, and then Lee's got some, and who's the other one? Was it
Horatio Gates?
Gates.
Yeah.
I was going to say Morgan, but that wasn't right. And so there's 3 columns. He gets across the Delaware. Well, I don't know if he gets across first, but he's over there. How many men does he have with him at that time when he gets across the river?
When he gets across the river initially?
Yeah. When it's just him and Lee and Gates haven't, or I guess it would be Sullivan and Gates.
Well, if we're going to put Washington sort of in this second, third week of December time period, right? If we want to look at it that way, he's probably got around, I want to take a look at this.
Well, like more than 1,000, less than 1,000?
He's got more than 1,000, but there's an appendix on this that I can reference here. And I can tell you what he's got with the estimates of troop strengths.
Sorry, I have that dead air there while I was taking a sip.
By December 4th, the strength with Washington is not more than 5,000.
By December 4th.
December 4th. His strength with him personally is not more than 5,000 men. That's going to get bolstered after Lee's troops start to join the Continental Army. By the time Lee's troops are actually moving south from northern New Jersey, crossing over, coming towards Washington, then he's going to be somewhere around 11,000 or so, but not 11,000 effectives. He'll only have, right? He's got much less effectives than that. By the time you get to the crossing, the main force under Washington is about 2,400.
Out of 11,000.
Out of 11,000, he has about 2,400 that are going to be actually effective. That's his wing. But remember, there are 4 planned crossings. Washington's just one prong of that.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second. Okay. So Washington is going to have about 2,500 effectives. Now, across the river in New Jersey, you've got the Hessians in Trenton, 1,500 or so?
You got about 1,500 under Rawl. You probably have another 3,000 under Von Donop.
Where are they?
And they're going to be in the area of Bordentown.
Okay.
Okay. There are over 1,000 at Princeton. And then as you move north, there are other British outposts as well with varying sizes.
So just in the Trenton area, right, there's several thousand there. But word and armies take a while to move. And so you can defeat them, I guess, piecemeal. Is that what his ultimate plan is, or is he just focusing on Trenton?
It's possible. Right. I think that's possibly part of his larger plan. Trenton is definitely a focus and a goal because it is the smallest outpost that is there. I do want to backtrack just quickly. Because when we're talking about British goals of potentially crossing the river, taking the city of Philadelphia, and a lot of the subordinate commanders think that's what they're going to do. That creates an absolute panic within the state of Pennsylvania. The further south the British troops move, Pennsylvania becomes more and more petrified that British forces will move across. The Continental Congress flees to Baltimore. By early December, they're operating there.
Right.
And in the city of Philadelphia, people are fleeing left and right. Henry Melchior Muhlenberg, who is the father of American Lutheranism, he lives in Trapp, Pennsylvania, which is, his house still exists today. You can go and see it sometime. It's a wonderful place. But Muhlenberg is talking about he can't find wagons at any price to help his relatives in Philadelphia move their goods out. He says the conveyances at any price can't be found. He's going to end up at one point with 22 people living in his house because he's hosting evacuees that are coming out of the city of Philadelphia. And he writes in his journal that there are rumors circulating in communities in Pennsylvania that the British will take Philadelphia, and that when they do take Philadelphia, British commanders will give their troops free license for 3 days to plunder without consequence. And Pennsylvania is a place that's really ill prepared to defend itself. It does not have a strong military culture. It is born of a Quaker tradition that is pacifist, that lacks centrality in terms of forms of government. And Pennsylvania is politically volatile in 1776 when the proprietary government under the Penns had been overthrown with the Declaration of Independence. Pennsylvania elected a really radical new state government, and it was headed by a Supreme Executive Council. And that Supreme Executive Council was rabidly pro-revolutionary to the point where it would force citizens to sign loyalty oaths, even Quakers who were conscientious objectors. And for those citizens in Pennsylvania who wouldn't sign oaths, the Supreme Executive Council could do things like suspend the writ of habeas corpus, imprison people, confiscate property, tell them that they were no longer allowed to serve on juries, to take away their firearms. So Pennsylvania is really a volatile place. And this threat of the British coming over into Pennsylvania in December is very real, and it's very visceral for those people. So the panic that's there is a real thing.
So, okay. Washington is getting where do I want to go with this first? Because there's so many things I want to just like fundamental things that I just want to get out there first. Okay, so he has to do something. He's not exactly up against a wall. I mean, he has all of Pennsylvania to retreat to if the British come over.
The problem though is the enlistments in the Army.
That's where I wanted to go. Yeah,
the vast majority of the men who are serving in the Continental Army, their enlistments are going to expire on either December 30th or December 31st. So if he doesn't do something quickly, he's probably not going to have any army to work with in any way, shape, or form. And in the face of defeat, it's going to be really hard to recruit men to refill those ranks.
But how do you get men who are about to go home to do something audacious like cross a river on Christmas night?
Right. Because they're still in the Army, right? You're not going to desert. I mean, by this point in time, for those who are left, after the rigors of the New York campaign, after everything that they've suffered, I think these are the most hardened and hardcore of the hardcore veterans.
The true believers.
Right. So... It's an audacious plan, but these guys don't know they're crossing the Delaware River, though, until they're actually formed up at McConkey's Ferry on the banks of the Delaware, and they're told to get in the boats.
Okay.
So the private soldier doesn't know this kind of thing in advance either.
Well, all right. And that leads me into my next question. How does Washington keep secrecy on this once he starts to share the plan with his generals? Okay. Number one. Number two, Are the Hessians aware, or the British? I mean, they must be aware that Washington is where he is.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So now are they? But they have nobody, no spies, or any detachments across the river on the.
They have great intelligence.
Okay.
The British have excellent intelligence. They know where Washington is, and there are spies that are probably infiltrating the American camps and the American headquarters.
And Washington knows this, or has a pretty good. He has to assume it, right?
He doesn't know that he doesn't know the level of information that they have.
Right.
Okay,
But he has to assume that he is not in a secure army. Like there's got to be, again, going back to same language, we look alike, same customs. Hard to tell who's friend and who's foe.
It is in this case.
Yes.
But, what assumptions he makes about what the British do or don't know, he doesn't really write about. But what I can tell you factually based on the record is that British espionage has infiltrated the American camp. British espionage is well aware of what Washington's plans are. When not long after Washington has a council of war and shares plans for the attack with his senior officers, reports are being made within a day to General James Grant, who is the British commander of forces in New Jersey, that Washington intends to cross the river and to strike.
But we don't know where.
At Trenton.
Oh, he does? Okay.
Yeah,
So
at Trenton. And warnings are being issued to Colonel Johann Rahl.
Okay.
Who is the commander of the 3 Hessian regiments that will be garrisoning Trenton. Now, for Rahl, who is getting, here's a couple of things, James Grant. James Grant is not the best general that the British have. James Grant is a guy who's politically well connected, who doesn't do well in the battlefield, and he is given the job of overseeing New Jersey during the course of this winter. Howe, I think, William Howe is so convinced that the British have this in the bag, that they're going to be able to do that soon, that Howe is going to start to send his most trusted lieutenant, Lord Charles Cornwallis, home on leave for the winter. That is a leave that eventually gets recalled. But if you're going to send your best guy, give him permission to cross an ocean and go home 3,000 miles to go see his wife, you must feel pretty confident about the military situation. And James Grant is supposed to oversee these outposts. He's up in New Brunswick, which they call Brunswick in the 18th century. Intelligence reports are circulating to James Grant in December about American intentions. Grant is passing those along to Rahl and Trenton, but with an air of disdain. And Grant is saying, this is a possibility. Maybe you should be prepared. At the same time, you have to imagine that Rahl is in Trenton pulling his hair out and basically saying, thank you, Captain Obvious, for flying around from protecting me from things I already figured out on my own. Because Rahl's outpost at Trenton has been beleaguered almost since its arrival. And I think what most people don't understand is they don't occupy Trenton until like December 14th. And 12 days later, you're going to have this battle there. But almost the entire time that Rahl is present in Trenton, he's being harassed. He's being harassed by Pennsylvania militia under James Ewing, which is on the opposite side of the Delaware River in Pennsylvania. And Ewing's got a pretty decent sized force that's over there and a number of artillery pieces. So for a number of days preceding the actual First Battle of Trenton, James Ewing is bombarding the town of Trenton from the Pennsylvania shore.
And not in coordination with Washington. Like, is he part of Washington's army or are they acting alone?
Ewing is
independently?
Ewing is commanding Pennsylvania militia and acting cooperatively with Continental forces. When we get to talk about who are the 4 crossings later, Ewing figures in. But Ewing is one of these guys so he's got that command. He's got artillery. He's regularly bombarding Trenton. And he will send over raiding parties on boats across the river to hit Hessian outposts, inflict casualties, and then disappear into the mist and go back across the river again. So he's, Rahl is a guy who's getting hit there. He's also getting hit in days leading up to the attack from New Jersey militia, from small forces of Continentals under Adam Stephen. So it is not as if the Hessians came to Trenton, settled in, and then this whole battle happens on the 26th, and it's an utter surprise. Rahl is constantly stressing his forces, stressing his men. He's writing for help to Karl von Donop over at Bordentown. He's writing to James Grant in Brunswick for help. Von Donop hates him, doesn't want to help him, and James Grant's response is, I could hold down New Jersey with a corporal's guard. James Grant treats him with contempt and disdain. So Rahl is cognizant of the situation that he's in as a precarious one. He understands that he's constantly getting hit by American forces, and he's asking for help, and help's not coming.
Okay.
Right? So I think one of Rahl's great sins, if you will, though, is that he looks at the Americans with contempt and thinks that if he is hit in force, that his troops will be able to defeat them on an open field of battle. He might have some good reason to think that based on, the prior record that the Hessians have in the American Revolution. If you look back at the New York campaign, Rawls' men perform extremely well throughout. And at White Plains, towards the end of that campaign, Rawls is the guy who takes his brigade and utterly smashes the American right flank on Chatterton's Hill. Every time he's met the Americans on an open field, Rawls has emerged victorious, right? So that's a little bit of background there.
So, okay, so there's a lot going on. It's not that they're all just sitting there. It's not that everybody's hunkered down for the winter. There's some mischief along the river.
It's a constant hive of activity.
Okay,
and I would liken it to constant stings by bees. Not a whole swarm, but there's enough bees there to make you feel the pain, and feeling it on a regular basis rather. So his men are getting little sleep in the days leading up to the actual first Battle of Trenton. They're constantly half-dressed, sleeping on their arms, and always on the alert for attacks from either Continental forces or from militia.
I'd rather sleep on my arms than on my head. Let me just go. We have a while ago, we got a super chat from Tory 1778. He says, would you say the revolution is fueled by the merchant class at the start? Rich man's war, poor man's fight. Example being the head of the rabble rousing, I think is what he meant to say. Sounds to me like a real Tory who's just trying to make it look like our revolution was illegitimate and
right. Well, we if that's the case, we could always talk about how the British want to protect the Caribbean after French involvement because of that. Those colonies have a lot more value because of the rum, sugar, and slave trade down there.
Yeah, Tory.
But anyway, that's not the purpose of today's program. That's right, program. Program. I'm 70 now.
We'll go check it out on Monday.
It's an interesting question, actually. It is not just something born of the elites. And I think if you were to look at Pennsylvania as an example, and this could hold true for other colonies too, particularly where there are areas of Scots-Irish immigration and Presbyterians that are coming into the colonies, they have left the land where they were born because of British oppression.
Right.
Right, to escape what they equate with serfdom, to get away from what they deem as religious persecution, and coming to a place where they find that there are opportunities. And now that this oppression is following them, they're going to rise up too. If you're going to have a successful revolution, you have to have the elites angry. You have to have the common person angry.
Right.
So clearly, British policies in the 1760s and 1770s, vis-a-vis things like the Stamp Act, Sugar Act, Declaratory Acts, the Coercive Acts of 1774, angered enough of a cross section of society socioeconomically that enough people were willing to rise up and say enough's enough. Mm-hmm. And if you were specifically to look at the Coercive Acts of 1774. And I will always say that this is the catalytic turning point for most people. Shutting the port of Boston when you're going to do things like starve women and children, not permit any sorts of supplies to come into the city, ruin people's businesses, whether they're John Hancock, who's one of the wealthiest men in the colonies at that point, or your average business person. And when you start to do things like that, you're going to motivate a whole population. Sure. And then on top of that, as part of the Coercive Acts, when the British in 1774 say that the French are allowed to practice French civil law in Canada and practice Catholicism freely and move into the Ohio River Valley, you have all these common people from the colonies who fought in the French and Indian War in the 1750s and 1760s going, well, wait a minute, they were the enemy. Yeah. You won't let us move past the Appalachians, but it's okay for these guys to come down and to take land that our people spilled their blood for. Yeah. Who are you looking out for here? Yep. So I think this is more than an economic issue with elites. This has to do with how people view their rights as freeborn Englishmen being trampled in a cross-section of society. And this is at a time when Englishmen, no matter where they live, view themselves as living in the freest society in the world, one that is not an absolute monarchy or a despotic one, but a constitutional one that has lost its way and is about to lose its colonies in North America.
It's interesting how nothing ever changes. Let me go to the phones because we have somebody on the phone right now, somebody who is about to be a licensed battlefield guide. 6 questions, Lens.
Hey.
Good evening.
Hey, Mikey, how you doing?
Hi, Mike.
I'm doing okay, and thanks, Gavin and Ken, for being on tonight for this.
You're
This is
welcome.
fantastic. I just have a question, and I want to set the stage a little bit here as well. New Jersey, this area of New Jersey in the 21st century looks significantly different than it did in the 18th century.
Yes.
So what would it looked like then, and how far away were Bordentown, Burlington, and Princeton away from Trenton?
Yeah.
And could those garrisons have easily supported each other?
Right. So it looks, Mike, first of all, great to hear from you. Best of luck on the upcoming test.
Yes,
and like
Mike,
I said,
very much
and
best
if you
of
were
luck.
listening in the intro, markedly different. Right now, much of this area of New Jersey is highly and densely populated with lots of people, lots of highways, and in the 18th century,
Very few Hessians.
very few Hessians these days. Yes. In the 18th century, it's much more sparsely populated, much more open. The communities there are smaller, and the road networks are not as many as they are today. And if you were to look at Trenton itself and sort of proximity to some of those other places, Princeton is about 11 or 12 miles away. Bordentown is about 6. Mount Holly is about 18 or 20. Burlington, off the top of my head, Mike, I think that's about 12 or 13 miles as well. So the point being that if you were to look at main outposts, Princeton certainly is within supporting distance at 12 miles. That's 11 or 12 miles. That's less than a day's march. Mount Holly at 23 miles, where Von Donop eventually ends up when the First Battle of Trenton happens, that's over a day's march away. He's out of range to provide immediate support. But Bordentown at 6 miles is certainly close enough to get there quickly.
And besides the New Jersey militia that's over the border, and they're picking at the Trenton garrison, are there any other forces on that side of the Delaware River that are Patriot forces? And while I'm asking this is a very pointed question as far as, because I already know the answer.
You always,
Daniel Griffin.
you always know
What?
the answer,
Wait
Mike.
a second.
Mike, you know the answer to every question you ask. You're like a prosecutor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He should have been a
Can you
prosecutor.
talk about Daniel Griffin and Mount Holly?
Yes.
Yeah, that's an important one here, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did get your question about Samuel Griffin, and yeah, there are other forces that are over there, and the Griffin forces are actually a little bit more organized than the Jersey militia that's kind of rising up in the wake of all these atrocities that are taking place in the fall of 1776. So Griffin is an interesting guy. He is from Virginia, and he's intricately linked to the sort of highbrow families of the age in the late 18th century. He is going to be serving in the New York campaign as an aide to Major General Charles Lee. And he is going to be a colonel at that point in time. He's wounded pretty severely at the Battle of Harlem Heights on September 16th of 1776. And Griffin is sent to Philadelphia to recuperate from his wounds. So we're fast forwarding into this period of late November, early December. General Israel Putnam is in command of what I would call, for lack of a better way to describe it, the Department of Philadelphia. Israel Putnam has any military forces that are in the city of Philadelphia itself. He sees value in a Samuel Griffin who is recuperating from his wounds, and he asks him to go into South Jersey to harass Crown forces that are over there. So Griffin is going to end up with this cobbled together brigade of 7 different New Jersey militia regiments from Cumberland, Gloucester, and Salem counties, and 2 companies of artillery from Virginia. And he is going to foray into South Jersey, and he is going to pick at Colonel Carl Von Donop like Von Donop was a scab and just make him bleed quite a bit. And he's going to hit him in the vicinity of his encampment at Bordentown, at a place called Slabtown. And eventually this is going to irritate von Donop so much that he is going to want to bring out the big fly swatter and just put Samuel Griffin down. And that's going to result in the Battle of Ironworks Hill at Mount Holly, New Jersey, in December of that year. So it was never a plan that Samuel Griffin was going to draw von Donop so far away from Trenton, but he ends up doing that. So that places von Donop in Mount Holly, 23 miles distant from Trenton, on the 23rd of December. And that puts him out of supporting distance from Rahl at Trenton when Trenton is eventually hit on the 26th of December, because after von Donop gets there, he decides to spend the 23rd, 24th, and 25th in the home of the woman who is still to this day the mysterious widow of Mount Holly, who has never really been identified. But Carl was having a good old time there in Mount Holly with her for 3 days and totally wrapped up in all of that. I'm glad you brought up Burlington too, Mike, because that's originally where von Donop was supposed to go. And I think he very much would have preferred to post himself at Burlington on the Delaware River for the winter there, because there was more space for his roughly 3,000 troops that he had under his command than there was at Bordentown. At Bordentown, there wasn't enough housing, and he's got guys out on the roads, out in the fields. He doesn't have enough structures. The reason that he couldn't use Burlington was, for once, the Americans actually have naval superiority and that's on the Delaware River, because the PA State Navy is patrolling up and down with row galleys, and they would have been close enough to Burlington to continually harass and shell the city if von Donop had stayed there.
Huh.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah, the row galleys are like, when people say row galley, they think of, sort of, what good is that? They were actually pretty impressive boats that were heavily armed with several cannon.
And you're saying row galley.
Right, like row the
not
boat.
rogue alley.
Correct.
Right.
Sorry,
I just wanted to make it clear for people that never heard this before.
And who have never lived in the Philadelphia region or don't understand my accent.
Right.
A galley that is rowed, so it's a large craft, 35 to 50 feet long, that is rowed with oars. It also has a small sail that you can use to harvest wind power. But they're heavily armed with several cannon. I mean, we're talking like a 24-pounder, a 9-pounder, and smaller pieces on them too. So they're certainly not huge naval vessels, but on a river, it's enough to do some serious damage with.
Can I just ask you a question here? You mentioned artillery, and one of the things that I watched to prepare for this was The Crossing with Jeff Daniels. And when they fire the artillery in typical Hollywood fashion, there's a big explosion and men go flying through the air on, they go flying through the air. Were there explosive shells in that time?
There are, but nothing that's going to cause people to launch 30 feet in the air. A lot of what they're using is solid shot. There are some explosive shells. Typically, though, they're using, if not solid shot, they're using canister or grape.
Okay.
It's not exactly the same as Civil War canister, but the theory behind it is the same. And the way that artillery is used in 18th century battles, a couple of different ways. If you have a siege, you're going to look at really large pieces, right, that are designed to batter fortifications, or you'll be using mortars with explosive shells that are going to drop down over the heads of troops. But if you're looking at a field action where you have two forces going head to head in an open field, artillery is usually designed to be very mobile. Right. Okay. And to move with the troops as they go along. And if you think about the plan for Confederate artillery during the assault on the third day, where they're talking about artillery moving forward with the troops, that's a constant thing in the American Revolution. Those guns that are moving are sometimes, 1, 2, 3 pound pieces.
Right. So that was the other thing, is they're not like what we're used to here. These are small bore, small diameter.
For the most part,
you're not getting a lot of range on these things. Like what's the maximum
they're
range?
Smaller. They're going to have the biggest guns they're going to have is going to be like a 6-pounder.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a
which
range.
is like the smallest gun here, and I think there was one of them.
One in Latham's battery.
Yeah.
Is that right, Mike?
I think so.
Is it Latham?
Yep.
Yay.
Yeah, Debbie corrected us. All right, good. We were all good.
Yep.
Yay.
Just one. But 6-pounders are the largest they're going to have.
I got that right on the guide exam, by the way.
The range is going to be less, but the design is not for shooting from a mile out.
Right.
The design is to support your infantry on the move.
Right.
So you're going to...
That's my point. It's a different purpose that it has. Not that they don't have, I mean, they do. Right. I'm assuming like you're firing on the row galley. Mm-hmm. You said a 25-pound or 24-pounder, a 9-pounder,
and some smaller guns as well.
So, okay, but the 24-pounder though, I mean,
the 24-pounder,
that means business.
That's big, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about
we have a 20-pound Parrot here, or not but many.
You've got the Austrian guns that are out there too, the 24-pound.
Oh yeah, that's right. With the Dolphins.
With the Dolphins that aren't Dolphins, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dolphins.
The Dauphine. No, anyway, but... So artillery typically will have counter battery fire purposes and then also supporting infantry as it moves through the field. When you get to first Trenton, and I know we're jumping all over the place, but we'll
get back on
where
track.
We're going.
Don't worry.
When you get to Trenton, the way that Knox uses the artillery is actually a little different. He brings massed firepower. The Americans for first Trenton will bring 18 field pieces across. And Knox will take them to the head of where the battle monument is in the city of Trenton today. And the streets there sort of converge where today's battle monument is. And at the time, the two streets that moved down were known as King and Queen Street. Knox brings the artillery to the head of King and Queen Street where they converge and uses it to sweep the town and to prevent the Hessians from forming and moving up. So he'll be using solid shot for counter battery fire as the Hessians try to employ their guns. Knox has 18. The Hessians only have 6 guns with them. They have six total at First Trenton. They have 6 brass 3-pounders that are there. So he'll be conducting counter battery fire if necessary, but also sweeping the streets with a lot of canister and grape to prevent Hessian formations and to scatter those troops.
Huh.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay. Anything else, Mike?
Yes. I think one more thing, but before I go, so basically to sum this all up here is that we have the Hessians on the other side of the river. They're getting picked at by forces and locals. Mm-hmm. The Hessians are spreading themselves out because they're dealing with other threats like Griffin's men on that side of the river.
Yep.
This is independent of the weather so far, and you have personality conflicts among the different commanders.
Yes,
that's where I want to go next.
It's kind of an interesting. It's going to be a recipe there, but also, can you go into who is Rawl,
right?
And what is his background, and what kind of commander was he? And that's going to be my last question.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I'm glad to, Mike. I think you have not only personality conflicts, and I talked a little bit about James Grant earlier today, who's the overall Crown Commander in New Jersey, and Grant not being their best guy. Grant also has a reputation as a glutton and a slob, on top of not being a great field commander. And clearly he's not someone who's listening to his subordinates, because he doesn't send Rawl the help that Rawl requests when he's getting picked at. And Grant never leaves to go and visit and see what's actually happening down there at Trenton. You're going to have language differences with these commanders too. Karl von Donop and Johann Rawl, or the two Hessians that are out there commanding outposts. Rawl speaks only German. And he speaks a country dialect of German, a Hessian country dialect. Von Donop speaks only fluent German and French. And then the English commanders, for the most part, only speak English. So there are some sort of innate communications issues that can result from those sorts of things. But if you want to look at the personalities in the Hessian army, Karl von Donop and Johann Gottlieb Rawl are about as different as you can get. Von Donop comes from a very wealthy, very noble family, and he is brought up within the Hessian military and within the courts. He is going to end up serving as a personal aide to the Landgrave of Hesse-Kassel and served with distinction in the 7 Years' War in Europe. When the revolution begins, von Donop wants to go fight in America with Hessian troops that are doing that, because von Donop has this grand plan that he's going to stay there after the rebels are defeated and get lots of money, lots of land, and lots of fame. Right? He's a guy who shoots high. If you look into the accounts of the people who had to interact with Karl von Donop, when he has to work with his superiors, he's very deferential. He writes to British commanders in a French that is extremely courtly. He treats them with civility. But all of the people who are working under him as subordinate officers absolutely hate him. He treats them terribly. He was short-tempered. He was harsh. And he instituted policies in New Jersey with his troops that they were not permitted to take American prisoners, that any American who surrendered was to be summarily executed. And if his troops failed to follow that order, they would be beaten severely with a cudgel. The Hessian army does a lot of things called issuing, instead of floggings like 30 lashes or something like that in the Continental or British forces, the Hessians use stripes, and it's basically caning by another word. He will end up being killed during the course of the war. The next year in 1777, he's mortally wounded at Fort Mercer. And his last words to a brother officer I found so telling: "It is finishing a noble career early, but I die the victim of my ambition and of the avarice of my sovereign." So that gives you some, that gives you some insight into Donop. For Rahl is going to come from a much more humble family. His father was in the Hessian military, and that was basically Johann Gottlieb Rahl's inroad to serve in the military. And in Hesse-Kassel in the 18th century, if you come from a middling or poor family, the military is a way to get yourself out of poverty or to prevent your family from falling into an impoverished state. And he's going to prove himself from a very young age. Interestingly enough, the American Revolution is not the first time that Rahl will end up serving the British as an auxiliary troop. He goes and helps to suppress the Jacobite rebellion in the 1740s. And he'll stay within the Hessian army, and by 1772, he is a colonel. He had fought not only in the Jacobite rebellion, but also distinguished himself in the 7 Years' War in Europe, and spends a little time actually in Russia fighting for Catherine the Great. And then he comes over with Hessian forces in 1776. Rahl, on the other hand, now we looked at von Donop from, what he was like. Rahl, universally, from everything I've seen, is well-liked by his superiors for his military ability and prowess on the battlefield, and very much appreciated by the men who serve under him, because they feel that Rahl is always looking out for their best interest and that he's taking care of them. And whereas von Donop is sort of an up-in-the-clouds aristocrat, Rahl is this earthy barracks room kind of guy that he can relate with everybody. He certainly enjoys the finer things in life. It's well known that he does not go anywhere without the oboists appointed to his headquarters. He's a great lover of music and the arts, but he's the type of leader that's a man's man, a soldier's leader. And that relationship with von Donop is poison. It's a mutual disdain. Even though von Donop is technically his superior at this point in time, von Donop never meets with him. They only ever communicate with each other in letters. And as a small example of that relationship just going south, Crosswick's Bridge is a place that is south of just 4 miles south of Trenton and 2 miles north of Bordentown. And it was an area that, although remote, needed to be guarded on a regular basis. And even though von Donop is closer and has twice the men that Rahl does, von Donop refuses to guard it. He makes Rahl do that. So he's spreading Rahl out even further by making him go look at the Crosswicks Creek Bridge all the time.
All right, Michael.
Well, that's all I got. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Mike.
very
Good
much,
hearing
Mike.
from you, buddy.
Talk to you later. Let's see. Percival Waddington is on the phone, so we'll take a call from Percival Waddington. Mr. Waddington, sir. Sire, me lord, Percival Waddington.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
I knew it. I knew it was Grant.
I thought for once it might have actually been somebody named Percival Waddington, but no, it's Grant.
Grant, how are you?
Grant, how are you?
How you going, fellas? Very good show. Ken, first time in, you're doing a good job. You're breaking your back carrying the show. Well done.
It's actually my 5th time on the show.
Wait until you see the Tavern Talk with Ken. He doesn't need to carry anything. He just goes, and we love to let him over here. But go ahead. What is your question, Grant? You hate the British. You are Australian. You've been persecuted by them just as much as we have.
I'm a big fan. They, help.
And you're Irish, O'Brien.
The greatest country in the world.
Well,
the greatest country in the world, and they, put us here. So But anyway, I'll move to my questions.
It's about time.
Firstly, Ken. I don't know if you covered it already, but did Washington, considering the terrible conditions, the sleet, the snow, the cold and everything, did he have a big concern about unit cohesion, crossing and then with the battle itself?
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's a great question. And the fact
I have it on my page of questions here.
The fact of the matter is that in an age without Doppler or radars or advanced meteorological capability to predict weather, it's kind of always a crapshoot, Grant, that the weather could turn sour at any moment in any season. So, his move on Christmas is designed partly for the fact that it would be unexpected for most people to try and launch an attack on Christmas night into the next morning. But they don't know that weather's coming. And after he's marshaled the army on the 25th and the orders have been issued, they need to move. It's not just Washington, as I talked about earlier, but there are potentially 3 other elements of Patriot forces that are going to cross the river. And when the weather starts to turn sour, and when that weather gets really bad, there's no time to stop and say we're going to cancel this thing.
Got to keep
the
going.
Operation is moving at that point in time, and the weather that night is god awful. We do have weather reports that are documented from that time period in the Delaware Valley, and for that day, Christmas Day, we see the temperature somewhere around 29 or 30 degrees. Early in the day, as the skies began to cloud over, cakes of ice were observed to be flowing down the Delaware River itself, and the crossing, which is supposed to start around dusk and does not get off on time, by that point in time, it is going to be snowing. That is mixed in with freezing rain, sleet, hail. High winds are going to ensue that night, too. It's what we would call a classic nor'easter storm. Here in that region of the country, I live out that way. And there's a couple of quick quotes that I have that will talk about that weather. One of the staff officers in the Continental Army made a note in his diary. "It is fearfully cold and raw and a snowstorm setting in. The wind is northeast and beats in the faces of the men. The storm is changing to sleet and cuts like a knife." Henry Knox, who is in overall charge of the crossing, wrote to his wife on December 28th, reflecting back toward the Christmas crossing, that floating ice in the river made the labor almost incredible. The night was cold and stormy, and it hailed with great violence.
Sounds fun.
Something I've never experienced, for sure.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
He lives on the Gold Coast or whatever the hell it is, up by the equator. Okay, so Grant, anything else? Because your question actually kind of leads me to where I want to take it.
Oh, I apologize too.
No. That's good, because now we can get right into it. But I want to give you another chance.
I've just got 2 quick questions for Ken,
Jesus
and then
Christ.
I'm gone. So these are very simple ones.
Sure.
I've always been fascinated by this event because of the Jeff Daniels movie. Ken, what sort of letter grade would you give it for accuracy?
D.
That movie.
Oh, I just watched it.
D. I would give it a D at best.
Now, Ken, would you say that you are a fair judge of Revolutionary War films and television shows? Or would you say that you are a little too Rain Man on it?
I am. I'm a tough critic.
Yeah.
I'm a tough critic. So here's why I have,
because you've told me that your favorite work is Al Pacino's Revolution.
That's it. We're done.
Classic movie, that one.
Ken's gone, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you and good night.
I'm back.
Oh, he's back.
So, yeah, I am a tough critic, but here's, I laud any type of an effort that comes out of Hollywood or documentary that will try to work to the best of its ability with the factual content and get people interested. The material culture, I'm probably too much of a Rain Man critic on, because that's one of my specialty points.
Right.
One of the big problems I have with The Crossing, actually, though, is the way that it treats the character of Henry Knox. I said to Matt earlier today in pre-production that, they make Knox seem so whiny and petulant and almost incompetent.
He's like that in the fat kid in all the kids shows, like I don't know, any of those movies where it's like the group of friends and they got the fat kid, the chunk. There you go.
The chunk. If it was the Goonies, he's Chunk. When he's like, "Don't swing your balls, Henry, you'll swamp the boat." But the fact of the matter is,
but right before that, he was whining that Colonel Glover doesn't like me, called me fat, and he's like, "This is not the time for bickering."
Henry. Yes. And the fact of the matter is that's not Knox's true character at all.
No, this is the guy that went up to Fort Ticonderoga and brought guns down on sleds.
Right. And is he a big guy? Yeah, but he's probably about Washington's height and just over 300 pounds. The guy's built like an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Like, it's not somebody you'd want to mess with.
Right.
And he's got this, according to all accounts, this huge, they call it a stentorian bass voice that can be heard above the din of the storm. Knox is actually the guy who's in charge of making that crossing happen. That's who Washington entrusts with it. So, for me, there are some areas where, of course, you have to give leeway in any television or movie production. But when the material facts as we know them are so deeply skewed or just disregarded, it's a major problem for me, because you've now maligned the reputation and character of an historic individual. And you leave your audience walking away with an inappropriate impression that is really hard to shake in a lot of instances. So, hopefully for whoever watched it, they were interested enough in the American Revolution to actually pick up a book and read and to learn what was going on. But I give it a D for lots of reasons.
So apparently...
That's an interesting answer.
Okay, I'm sorry, Grant.
Because Matt said it was almost like a documentary. He said it was like one of the most accurate movies he's ever seen.
Considering that we've never talked, well, whatever, Grant. Jean Hutchinson said, ouch, I love that movie. So she loves that movie. 6 Questions says, Rain Man, ouch. And then Reading Aid says, a little too Rain Man on it is a great phrase. Thank you very much. Heart's Horny Guy says, you mean Mel Gibson didn't avenge his son's death by Tarleton?
That's not his name, man.
Huh?
It's not his name.
What did I say?
You said Heart's Horny.
No, I didn't. Yeah.
You did.
Heart's. It's either Hart Shorn Guy, or which I hope not, or Heart's Horn Guy. I think it's Horn Guy.
How is it spelled?
H-A-R-T.
Okay, I can solve this mystery.
Yeah.
Hart is an 18th century term for a deer.
Go ahead.
And Hart's horn is the horn of a deer.
Beautiful.
That's right. So,
beautiful.
And there are some 18th century medicinal receipts that call for pulverized hartshorn to be dissolved in canary wines and things of that nature.
Amazing. This is why we love having Ken on.
And Matt made a sex joke out of it.
And I turned it into Heart's Horny Guy, but that's just because my eye saw the Y before it processed everything else, and horny came out. I'm sorry, everybody. I am so sorry. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Did he say something nice about me?
My last question, Matt.
And I'd like to thank Beluga Dingus for the $10 super chat, but you retracted the message, so I can't read it. So hopefully it was nice. And Ride in the Dutch Gal sent one in, and he says, thanks for the show tonight, Matt. Thank you for watching. You're very welcome. Grant, your last question, please, so I can move on with the godforsaken show.
Thank you, sir. It's your beautiful New Jersey, Trenton. Well, how similar does it look to the time of the revolution? Has it changed? Like, could people recognize and
disgusting
see
now.
the locations, or is it completely different?
It's a lot different, Grant. At the time, it's a very small community of only about 100 houses and a few churches, and some industrial operations along the Assunpink Creek. It's a lot, and there are orchards and farm fields actually. So it's very open today. It is it's a small city. It's got a very urban feel to it. It's also a city, unfortunately, that suffers from a lot of economic depression, and it's the state capital of New Jersey, too. So markedly different today. Lots of landmarks are gone, but if you have somebody who knows what they're doing and where they're going, they can show you where things did exist. The old barracks are from the 18th century, are still there, as are a few other structures, but it's a lot different there now.
Yeah. Some might say it's a dump. I'm not saying that. Some might say it. Some,
Yes, you are.
like Ken Wyman in the comment section, might say that. I would never say that.
I wouldn't either.
I would say it's a shithole. It's also the capital,
It is the capital.
you know. And so what do you expect from a capital city? Not much, right? I mean, let's be honest.
I work part-time for the state, so I have to
Well,
just let you
I don't. So I will say,
And I'll just sit here and nod.
yeah, I'm okay. So anything else, Graham? No, that's it. I've been giving you too much time. No, what? Oh God.
Shout out to the great people of Trenton for putting up with the insults to the great city. I'm sure we've got many Trenton viewers. And
Good night, Grant. Thank you for the call, my friend.
Thanks,
okay,
Grant.
so let's get to the crossing itself,
Yes,
because this
let's
is
do it.
fascinating to me. Let's start with the boats.
Right.
You said somewhere between what, 40 and 60?
Yeah, somewhere between 40 and 60.
And are these all the same type of boat?
They're not.
Uh-huh.
We believe that the vast majority of them are what we would call a Durham boat. And Durham boats are they can range in size from 30 to 60 feet.
Is that Durham or Durham?
If you would like to, Durham.
Durham.
Do you
okay.
are? Do you? Do you are? Do you are? Durham.
Oh, so Durham.
Durham, but Durham.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I'm just asking. Yeah. Go ahead.
So the vast majority are the Durham boats. Are going to range somewhere between 30 and 60 feet in length. They'll have an 8-foot beam. They'll have very sharp prow and stern. They are designed to carry economic cargo on the river. They can carry several tons, but they have a very shallow draft of only 24 to 30 inches.
Okay.
Right. So those being designed for cargo are not necessarily designed for passenger trade, but you can pack a heck of a lot of people into them. You probably would have seen sloops, shallops, the flat bottom ferries that I talked about earlier are going to take part in the crossing. The flat bottom ferries are actually going to be essential for all of that artillery that Henry Knox is going to bring over. That's how you're going to get the horses across, because the Durham boats have high sides. You're not going to be able to push artillery pieces into that. You're going to have a hard time getting horses into that. So the flat bottom ferries are going to be used for artillery and horses. All the other craft are going to be used for the men themselves to come across the river.
So I have a picture here of the Durham boats for people on camera 6 there.
There you go.
Yep. So there you go.
So that's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like there. And so you get how many men in there?
It would depend. I mean, depending on the size of it, you might be able to cram 50 to 60 men into a boat. That's one of the smaller ones.
Okay.
Okay. The boats that we have at I know there was a question that had come in, are any of the original boats still out there anywhere? Were any of them saved? The answer is no. Unfortunately, all of those were lost to posterity because there wasn't anybody in the immediate aftermath saying we should save a boat because we was using the crossing.
This is momentous.
People want their boats back to do boat things with that they're going to need them for. So none of the originals were saved, but Durhams will be used on the Delaware River to transport cargo for at least another 50 or 60 years after Washington crosses the Delaware itself.
We have a picture here of Steve Carell as Washington.
That's me.
And it's guys in the Durham boats there.
So I know that guy.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
it's not Steve Carell.
No, it does look like him.
Looks like Michael Scott.
His name is Ron Rinaldi.
Okay, Ron Rinaldi.
He does look.
From that angle, at least, I don't know what he looks like for real, but yeah.
Yeah, he does.
Okay, so there they are, though, in the Durham boats. Now, is this at the actual crossing site?
So that is at the crossing site, and it appears that picture, yeah, that's taken from the Pennsylvania side.
Okay.
So at the time, clearly is not known as Washington's Crossing. It's called McConkey's Ferry at that point.
Okay, so it's well, it's a ferry. So it is a not a natural, but it's a normal crossing point.
It is a normal crossing point.
So
and
here's my question.
Several in the Delaware at that point.
So,
in
okay, so my question is, have the British not covered all these crossing points?
Well, meaning in what way?
An outpost of some sort keeping an eye on things, or are they not thinking that the Washington would be so bold?
I don't think they're assuming that Washington's going to be so bold. What they're trying to do, part of the reason that they have their troops located in certain cities in New Jersey is they're utilizing the main road networks to connect them for transport and communication back and forth. And that's not always necessarily on the river. And we pointed out earlier, I think with Von Donop originally was supposed to go to Burlington, which is on the river. And he's not able to go there because the Pennsylvania State Navy controls the river at that point in time.
Okay.
So, and think about Ewing on the other side, right? Trenton, which is not far from the river, Trenton's being constantly harassed by Ewing.
Right.
So there is a little bit more safety in the interior as opposed to the river. But the British are sending patrols to go watch points.
Okay.
To watch crossing points on the river.
Okay.
So they are keeping an eye on what's happening on the other side, for sure. So it's not as if they're ignoring the fact that there are ferries that are out there.
So is it that is it an arrogance, or is it a complacency? Like, what is it that makes it so that Washington is able to, and I know I'm jumping ahead here, but what is it that enables him to make not only the crossing, but then the, 10-mile march from the crossing point down to Trenton?
I think it's a mixture of the weather and British weather, incompetency in British high command, the contentious relationship between Von Donop and Rahl, Von Donop being stuck over at Mount Holly because he allows himself to get stuck there, and Rahl's low opinion of American forces. Rahl's subordinates, chief among them, Major von Deckhow of the Kniphausen Regiment, is living through the experience of being in this town that is small, which they call it small, nasty, dirty. They want to get out of there, want to go to Philadelphia. They're stuck in this town from December 14th on, being constantly harassed by militia or Continental troops. Von Deckhow is urging Rahl to try to fortify the town in some way, shape, or form, to build entrenchments, to build small fortifications. And Rahl's response to that is scheisse by scheisse.
Shit by shit.
Shit by shit. Let them come at us. We will take them with the bayonet.
What the hell does shit by shit mean?
Apparently that's
the way
just the way Rahl.
They say bullshit.
You know, I don't know. But yeah, shit by shit, shit on shit. Basically that Rahl's not going to take the time to entrench. He does hold the Americans in very low regard. Even though he realizes he's in a perilous situation, he holds the Americans in low regard in it. But he'll
pay for that.
He's constantly patrolling. He's on the lookout for what's happening on the river, but he's also on the lookout for what's happening on the road networks too. There are constant patrols that are watching a couple miles outside of the town of Trenton in all directions. That storm that is so legendary, that makes the crossing so difficult, also makes it hard for the Hessians that are in the town itself. And the way that the storm is blowing when Washington eventually approaches the town obscures visibility in a lot of ways. And the way that the storm is blowing, it's blowing against the Hessians.
So, okay.
Right?
At Washington's back.
It's at Washington's back, blowing into the faces of the Hessians too. So there are lots of factors that do it. I don't think it's ever one. And whenever you look at military conflict or military engagements, contingency is always key. There are so many contingencies that could impact anything at any one moment. Case in point is, what is the plan for this crossing once Washington develops it, right? He has his 2,500 men at McConkey's Ferry that he's going to cross over on Christmas night, December 25th of 76. What is he also expecting? He's expecting at least 2 and potentially 3 other Continental forces to cross over into the state of New Jersey. So he's at McConkey's Ferry about 10, 11 miles north of Trenton. He is expecting a large force of Pennsylvania militia under Brigadier General James Ewing to cross at the Trenton Ferry, which is just a half a mile south of Trenton itself. And their job is supposed to be to cross over and to guard the southern approaches. That basically Ewing's guys could come over there with about 1,000 men, maybe a little bit more than that, and seal off the exit route to the south, which could prevent a Hessian garrison from escaping southward across the Assunpink Creek, but also to prevent reinforcements that the Hessians would have further south from coming north. All right. If you want to move really far down south, and take a look at Israel Putnam in Philadelphia, there's some thought that if Putnam can get across the river with any degree of his force, that he can cause diversions in South Jersey, maybe create some confusion so that the Hessians may not know where the main attacks are going to be coming from. If you want to look a bit, to Cadwalader's guys who were initially supposed to cross at Burlington, they are supposed to go over there and to divert Von Donop or to engage Von Donop so that Washington and Ewing can smash the Hessians at Trenton in a pincer maneuver. That's the ultimate goal. It's a complicated plan. It calls for 4 different forces spread from Philadelphia to Burlington to try to move in coordination, get across the river, and hit their targets at coordinated times. Under the most ideal of conditions, that's an ambitious plan, right? A lot of people have looked at this over the years and said, this is Washington overcomplicating things again, because he always comes up with these complicated battle plans. But those are often the same people who want to say that Washington is a military doofus. And I got to tell you, it's not a military doofus who can conceive of coordinated attacks on multiple fronts in 4 different locations, having main attack forces, converging attack forces, diversionary attack forces that are all contributing to one master plan that he's developed. That does take brains.
But now let me just ask here.
Yeah.
Could it be that they would say he's a doofus because a doofus would, what condition is not only his army in, but also the condition of the river. It's winter. There's a lot of things working against him. I guess this leads to my other question that I wanted to get to earlier, which was, is he getting any pushback from his generals with this plan? Prior to, obviously.
I'll do that in one minute.
Okay.
But I just want to say, too, about the 4 different crossings. He needs different points to try to get this many guys across. And if we're looking at all these forces in sum toto, I'm going to put Putnam to the side for a minute. But if we look at Ewing, Ewing's got his Pennsylvania militia, right? Cadwalader's got Philadelphia Associators, which for all intents and purposes is sort of militia. And he's accompanied by a number of New England Continentals under Colonel Daniel Hitchcock. So Cadwalader and Hitchcock are one, Washington's another, Ewing's the third. If we put all those guys together, that's a force of 6,500.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. You can't cross 6,500 guys at one ferry crossing and do it in the amount of time that you need. It would take a couple of days.
Yeah.
So you're going to have multiple crossing points for that. The condition of the men, the condition of the army, the only thing that they're really well supplied with, Matt, is powder and ball. They've got ammo, right? For the muskets, they've got ammo for the cannons. They are short on everything else. Clothing, blankets, rations are running extremely low at this point in time, too. Enlistments are about to run out. The situation is really coming to a head. So the condition of the army is not great.
Right. But the condition of the Hessians is pretty good, right?
The condition of the Hessians,
as far as all that stuff goes,
physically is very good.
Yeah.
Mentally, though, those guys are absolutely exhausted. Those patrols are seeing ghosts where they aren't, because there is so much stuff that's been coming at them all the time. The weather condition is not something anybody could have predicted reasonably.
They're better supplied.
The Hessians are better supplied.
So if Washington can sack them in Trenton, he can get their supplies.
Yep.
And his army can live another day.
That's part of what he...
Yeah.
Well, eventually, when they score that victory...
Kind of like Lee coming up here. He's got to get stuff.
At a micro level, yeah. I mean, Washington will walk out of Trenton after he wins with... all 6 pieces of Hessian artillery, something close to 1,000 muskets, a number of drums, provisions. there's a lot that he'll pull out of that he'll be able to use.
Well, you just gave away the ending.
Well,
so okay, they get across. How long does it take them to get across? When do they start?
The
when do they
crossing
end?
is going to take. So let's talk about for a minute, because this had come up from people about these other forces under Ewing and Cadwalader.
Yes,
you have to understand that at Trenton itself, there are falls on the river. And below the falls at Trenton, we're dealing with a different river than we are above the falls at Trenton. When you get below the falls, the river becomes tidal. It also begins to widen quite a bit. Above the falls of Trenton, we're dealing with a bit of a narrower river. Ewing, who's trying to cross very near Trenton, is going to encounter a situation where he can't even put a boat in the water. If you had gone to Trenton, a couple weeks ago when we were in the deep freeze, what you would have seen would have been waves of frozen ice in the river going out 70 to 80 yards at least. Because of the tidal nature of it and the way the water is moving, it starts to just form waves of ice that are jagged, and you can't get boats across there.
I have never seen that before in my life. That's so cool.
It's wild. If you go over the bridge and you look at that sometime, if you get into that cold snap, you'll see it. That's what's being encountered by Ewing. So he is paralyzed by the condition of the river. For Cadwalader, he's initially going to try at Burlington, and it's proving impossible. So he's going to move to Dunk's Ferry, which is at modern Neshaminy State Park. And he's going to try to get across there. He gets to within 150 to 200 feet of the Jersey shore and runs into solid ice. Decides that he'll try to get out and march his men across the solid ice to do the rest of the crossing. The men are able to walk, but it's not thick enough to support the cannon, and it's not thick enough to support the horses. And we're talking about a force of 1,800 men with Hitchcock and Cadwalader combined. So eventually they're going to have to turn back and cross back into Pennsylvania. So now you have, and Putnam never makes a serious effort. So now out of the 4 intended crossing points, you have just Washington that's going to start to cross and actually get over there on Christmas night itself.
Wow. Okay. So he gets over there. What was it, like 5:30 in the evening they start?
So they're supposed to start around dusk.
Okay.
Which is going to be about 4:40, 4:45 in the evening is when you're going to start to see dusk and sunset. John Greenwood is a fifer from Connecticut, and he tells us that he's leaving his camp at Newtown, which is about 5 or 6 miles away from McConkey's Ferry, about sunset, and that his unit is one of the first that ends up crossing. So from the very beginning, there are delays. We estimate that they're probably about 3 hours behind schedule from the start, and this is going to be a slow process for them to get across the river. And they will get to the Jersey side before daylight hits, but the crossing probably takes about 10 to 11 hours to get 2,400 men, all the guns, and the horses across the river and safely over to the other side. Washington is observed after he crosses to be seen deep in thought, sitting on a box that was once a beehive. He will later write that as he was certain that there was making a retreat without being discovered and harassed on repassing the river, he determined to push on at all events, which tells me that while the crossing is happening, he's thinking maybe we should turn back. What happens if we turn back? But then realizing that he might get the army stuck on the river and he's going to have to push ahead. Also, keep in mind, he has no idea that Ewing and Cadwalader don't make it across.
Right. I was going to ask, did word get to him?
No, he doesn't know in real time because there's no instantaneous communication. There's no system of signaling like giant bonfires like, hey, we're across. For obvious reasons, that would have given some things away. Right.
Right.
So he really is operating within a sphere of extreme weather difficulty, time delays, and lack of appropriate intelligence about what these other cooperative forces are or are not doing in terms of reaching their objectives.
Matthew Gillespie says, please give Ken a Dan Butterfield for sharing his knowledge. Also, where did he get the hat? Where did you get that hat?
Dan, Butterfield.
I got this hat. I don't know if they're still in business anymore. but there is a company called Revolution Wear, WEAR.
I've seen that.
And revolutionwear.net. And he was a guy who used to show up at some reenactments and living histories. And he had T-shirts and hats with RevWar flags. So this is the replacement for the first one I bought 20 years ago that I still have and use to give tours at Valley Forge because I just want to get it through 20 seasons. But I'm glad you like it.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay, so do they have any problems, like any boats sinking, any guys falling overboard, anything like that, swamping, ball swaying?
Yeah, ball swaying, I'm sure, because there are accounts of soldiers being ordered to jump up and down at times to try to prevent ice from caking onto the side of the boats.
Do we know what the temperature was?
The temperature is going to be probably in the high 20s. And that's based on the meteorological records that we've got. So high 20s and in the middle of a nor'easter. And you imagine most of this army is shoeless. Most of the clothes are worn out. They've been issued 3 days ration and 60 rounds of ammunition and told nothing about where they're going. They're just told to go here and aboard. There are no accounts of any boats sinking or any boats being lost in the river. There are no accounts of any men drowning. There are
horses.
I've not seen any accounts of horses being lost either, and no artillery lost. So they are able to successfully make the crossing, and that's thanks to Knox.
Yeah,
Knox is the guy that's superintending this. As soon as the entire army is over, they have to move. But Washington, even after initial forces had come out, is sending out security cordons into the surrounding area because what he wants to do is to start to harvest anybody who may be on the roads in the middle of the night, early in the morning, and to bring them in because he does not want it leaking out that he is moving towards Trenton.
Yeah.
Interestingly, one of the groups of people that's brought in is a group of Continental Infantry led by General Adam Stephen. Adam Stephen is a guy that's known to Washington since the French and Indian War. They had served together during that conflict. Adam Stephen is actually at Fort Necessity. And to give you an idea of Adam Stephen, he's been a pain in Washington's ass for 20 years. When Fort Necessity is lost to the French and Washington is forced to capitulate, that's a moment when if one commander from one word from the French commander, the natives may have fallen on Washington and his Virginia provincials and slaughtered all of them. Washington's able to get out alive and to get his men out alive.
Yeah.
As they're leaving the fort, Adam Stephen literally kicks a French officer in the ass. Literally kicks him in the ass. And what are you doing? They're political rivals, they're economic rivals in the interwar period. But Adam Stephen had a force of men on the Pennsylvania side of the river in the days leading up to the crossing itself. And Hessian pickets had come down to the river, sniped at him, killed one of his guys. Stephen went on a mission without authorization, took 40 to 50 guys across the river on Christmas Eve, and went and go hit a Hessian outpost on Christmas Day. So as Washington's moving these security cordons and eventually the main army out, they see this body of 50 armed men wondering who the hell they are. And it's Adam Stephen. And Washington is absolutely livid because he thinks that Adam Stephen has ruined the surprise. In retrospect, though, looking at things now, Rawls getting all these warnings, right? He's been hit constantly from various sides, and he's getting warned about a potential Christmas attack. It's not a far stretch to say that Rawls may have thought that Adam Stephen's attack force of 50 to 60 guys overrunning an outpost was the attack that was coming. That Rawls may have thought that was it. So Washington, furious at the time that he thought Stephen blew the cover, Adam Stephen's little unauthorized mission may have, helped to tip the balance. I mean, that's just a food for thought kind of thing.
All right, so he gets the army over.
Yep.
And in the crossing, there's a scene where there's a bunch of civilians that the security cordon pulled in. Is that true?
That's accurate.
Okay.
I'll give it that.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So the one good thing in that movie there, for those of you keeping score. And all right. So now the journey to Trenton begins. They're going to take two roads.
They're going to march inland for about a mile, and then they're going to split. Greene and Washington are going to take that upper path where they're going to go up through the hills, Bear Creek, a Bear Tavern Road that will lead them to Jacobs Creek, and then Sullivan's column will take the flatter River Road. So Washington is going to want to hit Trenton from the north, and he's got Greene's column. Sullivan's job is going to be to move along the river, skirting along the eastern edge of Trenton, and to link up with Ewing and to help seal off that southern pass.
Got it.
Okay. The march is difficult for all of them because this storm that they've just crossed the river in does not stop. This continues on throughout the night, throughout the morning. They're going to march at least 10 miles in this. John Greenwood again tells us that they moved no faster than a 10-year-old without a purpose on the course of this march, and that they kept halting all the time, waiting for men to catch up or, just taking a brief respite. But they're trying to whip these guys along at 2 to 3 miles an hour to get there before daybreak. That's the goal. Washington and Greene on that Bear Tavern Road in Jacobs Creek run into the ravine at Jacobs Creek, which is an additional obstacle for the artillery and the horses with them. You can still go there to this day and see the terrain feature. It's tremendous. You are moving along the road, and all of a sudden you are on the top of a cliff that goes down 100 feet, and it's a 45-degree angle. And they've got to take men, horses, and artillery down and then up.
In snow.
In the snow.
And the plows probably didn't get out yet.
No plows, no salt. Right? And, I mean, you've ridden horses. I've ridden horses a little bit too. A 45-degree angle on good footing.
Yeah. It's pretty scary.
Yeah. Washington's doing it, in the storm in bad footing. And there is an account of at this ravine, his horse's back legs go out. And Washington feels it, and while keeping one hand on the rein, takes the other hand and grabs the horse by the mane as the animal's nose is almost at the ground, and just by sheer force of strength, pulls the animal back up again and stays mounted the entire time.
Oh, my God.
There were a lot of accounts of people remarking on seeing that, and it was an insane feat of strength and horsemanship.
I've done that. Horses are easily led, and you just got to let them know you're a boss
when they want to be.
I always led my horses.
So they Greene's column, which Washington is with, Sullivan has the other column. Interestingly enough, this is one of the first, I believe, recorded instances of trying to synchronize timepieces to hit a target at the same time, because they do synchronize watches before the columns depart. And the goal is to hit Trenton concurrently.
So are they thinking Washington's a doofus because he's inventing a lot of stuff that we now, do as routine?
No, I think he's just using common sense. I mean,
yeah, I know, but often what becomes common sense isn't recognized when it's new, and it's thought of as crazy or doofussery or you know what I mean?
I don't think there's
a lot of times I get this. A lot of people think, you're nuts. And I go, no, it's just genius.
Well, yeah, you and I walk that line every day. It's all good, man. I understand. I get you.
Yeah.
No, there's no account of anybody saying, like, what's this crazy guy doing synchronizing watches? I haven't seen anything like that. But, I think the force...
Well, I don't mean that specifically.
Right, no, I know.
And I mean, just give me some credit. God.
Okay, what do you mean?
I don't know. I don't know what I mean. I thought maybe you could figure it out for me. If I just start saying something, you'd figure out the rest.
So who does well, you know what? Some people do think he's incompetent. I mean, that's for sure.
But that's what I'm saying.
Charles Lee did.
Charles Lee doesn't like him.
Horatio Gates doesn't like him. Before Lee gets captured, he's dragging his feet to even bring those guys down to Washington.
Right.
And he keeps bitching and moaning about wanting an independent command. And he's writing to Joseph Reed, who is Washington's advocate. They're both criticizing Washington's military ability. Horatio Gates, during this period before the crossing, Gates is writing to Washington saying, "I'm too sick to join you with my troops, can't do it." And Washington says, "Fine, if you need to go to Philadelphia, do that. But on the way, could you stop at Burlington and just give me some intelligence on what's happening at Burlington?" No, I'm too sick. I can't do that. And then later he finds out that Gates has traveled not just to Philadelphia, but 100 miles further south to Congress so that Gates can badmouth Washington there.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what Gates does in 1777 again. So, yeah.
So wait, how come he never got rid of Gates? Why would you keep that guy around?
Well, it's Congress's decision, not Washington's.
But Washington can't, maybe make him, if you will, a supernumerary in his own army. In other words, yeah, you could still be in the army, but you don't have a command.
By the time you get to 1777, Gates has politically maneuvered himself to be on the Board of War, which is a political intermediary that's between Washington and Washington's boss, who is the president of Congress. Gates is really good at politics.
Oh, okay.
And gets independent command in the South later in the war, kind of out of Washington's hair, but performs really miserably down there.
Yes.
Interestingly, people like Gates and
Which
Lee,
is referred to in the Patriot.
It is indeed. And I guess they get that fact right. I will give them that. But no, there are detractors. But when Congress is looking at the situation too, like we can't fall into looking at knowing the outcome. Like we always know what's going to happen. We know Washington's going to win. We know that this whole operation is going to be a success. Somebody like Gates might have every reason to think that an amphibious assault in winter against an enemy in a fixed position who's stronger than you are is absolutely insane. And while Washington has that French and Indian War military experience, people like Charles Lee and Horatio Gates were actually commissioned officers in the British Army. Mm-hmm. So when Congress looks at them, Congress sees them as having real credentialed value. When Lee is captured in December of 1776, there are a number of British officers who are expressing relief because they feel they've captured the only person who's a real threat to them. Right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So yes, those people think that Washington is doofusy.
All right. So he gets over there.
Yep.
They split up. They go down. Mm-hmm. They hit Trenton.
Yep.
Is it daylight yet?
It is daylight when that happens.
So they're a little later than he had hoped to be.
A little later than they had hoped.
But it's the day after Christmas.
It is the day after Christmas.
So what does that tell you? Everybody's asleep.
Not necessarily.
Oh, what?
Yeah. That is one of the great myths, is that the Hessians were drunk or sleeping or had this long night of partying.
They were drunk and awake.
They were functional alcoholic Germans. That's not true. In reality, it's a force that's very exhausted, and it is performing a lot of the patrols that it normally would have, and a lot of Rawls' early morning patrols are done at this point. And the storm, by the time you get to the early daylight hours of December 26th, has increased in such intensity that the Hessian outposts are staying within the guardhouse structures or within the homes that are near their outposts, not outside in the middle of a damn blizzard.
Yeah.
Right? And Washington is then able to approach the town and get very close to it because the weather becomes a factor in his favor.
So by the time it's daylight and he's getting into position around Trenton, is it still snowing?
It is.
It is. So it's not a bright, clear day. No, the crossing got that wrong.
The crossing got that wrong. It is not. It is one of those violent storms where if you were outside, your visibility is limited to maybe 80 to 100 yards in front of you.
So, I mean, driving on these paved roads that we have with streetlights and everything today in a blizzard like that, even if they have plows out and, it's very difficult to see where you're going. Mm-hmm. How are they finding the roads and keeping the roads? Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's not roads like we're used to.
It's not roads like we're used to, but there are landmarks and structures.
Sure.
And the Army is not necessarily always marching in column down a road. The Army is actually, when you get towards Trenton, beginning to spread out into line formations, and they're using fields on either side of the road.
Oh, sure, as you get towards Trenton.
And that's, at this point, when they're getting towards Trenton, is when they have first contact with enemy outposts. And it's by chance. There's a Hessian lieutenant named Andreas Wiederholt, and he is at a guardhouse with about 12 or 13 guys, and it just gets so stuffy and uncomfortable and stinky in there that he's like, I need a breath of air.
Yeah.
Right? So he goes outside and peers into the middle of the storm and sees what he initially thinks is one of the other patrols coming off duty and back in, and thinks nothing of it. And then this figure out there in the bad weather it becomes a larger mass.
Oh, God.
And as he's beginning to think, odd, musket balls begin whizzing by his face.
Oh.
So he calls out his guard, exchanges a few volleys at about probably 300 to 400 yards, and then beats feet as fast as he can to start moving back towards Trenton itself. But the point is, because of the weather factors, the Americans are almost on top of Trenton before the Hessians can even react.
So they don't have enough reaction
They don't have enough reaction time. When the American artillery is arrayed at the top of King and Queen Streets and American infantry is beginning to push through the town, Rahl himself actually is still asleep at that hour. He's woken up by an aide and then mounts his horse quickly. Also, that scene in the crossing, I'll give them credit for that. The whole thing where Rahl is pounding on the door, waking up, getting dressed.
Slow.
Ist mein Pferd gesessen, know, that whole scene.
Yeah, Gefurkenflecken.
It's Swedish chef. So the Americans are there, and Henry Knox tells us about the weather, since you asked, and this is a letter that he writes to his wife. The storm continued with great violence, but was in our backs and consequently in the faces of our enemy. They endeavored to form in the streets of Trenton, the heads of which we had previously the possession of with cannon. So Knox himself is telling us that they've got that heights covered and that the cannon are out before the Hessians can even form the streets. So he said, these, in the twinkling of an eye, and he means the cannon, cleared the streets. We began an apparently circuitous march. Sorry, that's a different quote. That was John Greenwood. Anyway, clearing the streets. So as Washington's coming in and he's got that column with Greene and Henry Knox's artillery is just sweeping streets, Sullivan is getting there right on time, coming down the River Road route, because as Washington is sweeping down from the north, here comes Sullivan from the east. He never sees James Ewing because James Ewing never made it across, but Sullivan is able to skirt the eastern edge of town, start to push the Hessians in towards the center, and then hook around to the south and try to seal off that escape route at the Assunpink Creek. Because at the Assunpink, there is a stone bridge. The footers for the original 18th century stone bridge are still there today. If you go to Mill Hill Park in Trenton and you stand on the bridge that's there today, that's a pedestrian walkway, and look over, you'll see the footers from the original stone bridge. Crossing over the Assunpink, which is raging at this point, would have been difficult without bridges or one or two fording points, but he is able to get down there and to start to seal the escape route off. He doesn't get absolutely everybody. There are some Hessians who are able to eventually escape, but Sullivan getting there on time with Washington, it's almost miraculous that they actually did get there on time and with each other when they were supposed to. The battle that rages within the streets, it maybe is 45 minutes, maybe 75 minutes. It's going to be pretty brutal, quick fighting, but it's not going to involve a whole lot of casualties per se, particularly if you look at battles in the American Civil War. There are no Americans who are killed outright as a result of combat. There are a small handful that are wounded. One of the five, the most serious of which is Lieutenant James Monroe, a future president of the United States, who has an artery severed in his shoulder. But that artery is fixed in time by a doctor named James Riker, who is in his late...
founded the island. No?
No.
Rikers Island?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
My bad.
Riker is a volunteer serving with the column. Interestingly enough, so as the Army's, moving towards Trenton, William Washington, who is a cousin of the commander-in-chief, and James Monroe are in this Virginia Dragoon unit, and they're part of the security forces that are flat-heading out looking for civilians and trying to protect the operation. There's this guy who comes out in his nightshirt with dogs barking and starts to yell at Monroe and Washington, thinking they're Hessians. When Riker realizes they're Patriot, he says, if you're going for a fight, you'll probably need my help. I'm a doctor. I'm willing to come along with you as a volunteer. That same doctor ends up saving Monroe's life.
Wow.
Yeah, if not for Riker, Monroe...
We might not have had a James Monroe
president. We might not have had a James Monroe, and then Manifest Destiny and all that.
Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord. Imagine that.
In terms of Hessians, there are maybe 25 who are killed outright, and somewhere between 85 and 95 who are wounded.
It's if you go to the American battlefield, here, go to, American Battlefield Trust here. Battlefields.org, ladies and gentlemen. Look at this here. This looks like a joke. You've got, 2,400 Americans, 1,500 Brits or Hessians, 905 casualties, 5 American casualties.
And the 905 is going to be almost entirely prisoners of war.
Captured.
Minus the numbers that I gave you.
I think I saw it broken down somewhere. It might have been, here.
Let's see.
So they have 22 killed, 83 wounded, 800 missing and captured.
So I'd put the missing and captured a little higher than that. But
Okay.
I think that's pretty close based on a number of things that I've read, that those numbers are always funky.
Yeah.
You can only always estimate. There is actually one British unit at that garrison. There is a British Dragoon unit that's there, and when things start to hit the fan, that unit beats feet and they get out of there. So Rawls left just with the 3 Hessian regiments that are there, the Rahl Regiment, the Lossberg Regiment, and the Kniphausen Regiment. But the vast majority of the casualties end up as prisoners of war. There are somewhere between 400 and 500 Hessian soldiers, along with women and children who are attached to the Hessian forces, who do end up escaping across the Assunpink Creek. So that accounts for I'm looking at this figure that's about 900 to 1,000. What about, 1,500 people are there? It's the 400 to 500 who are going to escape across the Assunpink and try to get out of there. But Washington's going to end up with, on his hands, somewhere between 850 to 900 prisoners, after the Hessian forces are surrounded and eventually decide to lay down their arms and surrender. Rahl had been seriously wounded within the course of the action. He had been shot twice in his side trying to rally his troops. Rahl did not want to surrender. Rahl wanted to reform his men and to charge uphill towards the Americans and try to break their lines. He wanted to break through them with a bayonet. But in the course of the rallying, he's shot twice. He is brought first to the Methodist church in town, and then after that, he is transferred to the home of a wealthy local merchant named Stacy Potts. And Rahl had been using Stacy Potts' home as his headquarters during the time that the army was in his Hessian brigade was in Trenton. Washington will go to visit Rahl before he dies. And Rahl asks for fair treatment of his men. He will be left behind in Trenton when Washington pulls out. Washington will leave probably about 50 to 60 Hessians behind that he does not take with him, because they are so badly wounded that moving them would have killed them. So he gives them parole and then leaves them behind in town. And then it's sort of a case of, what now? This thing actually worked. This isn't looking so crazy. What are we going to do next? Yeah. And there was one of the listeners had said in a question about that's had something along the lines of, what is one thing, maybe a minor detail that people miss, and it's that question. It's what now? We won, because Washington doesn't know how far away British or Hessian reinforcements might be, if they're already on the way because they've heard something, and staying there probably isn't the best option at that point. Plus, he's now got 850 to 900 prisoners on his hands.
Yeah, what does he do with them?
Right, and he's got to pull all these supplies and gear that he wants to get out too. What he wants to try to do, and attempts to do first, is to cross the river at Trenton.
Okay.
Right. And I think what he's had everything gone to plan with all the forces, all the crossings happening. I think what he would have expected was, James Ewing will be there and Ewing will have boats to get us back across. James Ewing never makes it. So Washington goes and takes a look at the Trenton ferry, and I think they make a half-hearted attempt to bring a few wagon loads of Hessian supplies down there, realize there's no way they're getting across, and immediately understand that even though we have just been up all night, marched through this, fought this battle, we're going to have to go back the way we came.
Yeah.
So now the army will march the 9 to 10 miles back up to the place in New Jersey near Johnson's Ferry where they had gotten off. And then they're going to have to cross the army back over into Pennsylvania using the crossing points that they had used on the 25th. So on the afternoon of the 26th, they're taking this march back. All the Hessian prisoners are coming with them. They're going back across the river once again. Washington will send initially a number of the prisoners to Newtown, Pennsylvania, which is about 5 or 6 miles away under guard. Then those prisoners will be transported to Philadelphia, and they'll be paraded through the streets as a sign of a great American victory. The officers will be separated from the enlisted personnel, and the citizens of Philadelphia are given, Washington publishes leaflets. And the basic tenor of those leaflets is that these people are not an enemy, that they were sent here to fight us, and you need to treat them with civility. Which is an interesting thing, because British and Hessian treatment of American POWs is notoriously awful.
Right.
Those troops will be in Philadelphia for a short point in time and then move out towards Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and eventually south into Maryland and Virginia, and be placed to work on farms in German-speaking communities largely. And they'll be given certain limited freedoms, but they are there to help the American economy.
Did they end up staying after the war, like a lot of the German POWs did after World War II?
A lot of the records that we have tell us that there is a vast proportion. Some estimates are range from 25 to 40% of those who served in America and were not casualties end up staying here.
Yeah, because they look around and they say, "Man Gott, wir schicken Blicken."
Yeah,
and how could you disagree?
Yep.
So. He gets everything back over the river. How long does that take? Are there any problems doing that?
Getting back over the river is not as bad as crossing, right?
It's always easier going home.
They do have to. It's always shorter.
Yeah, I know.
It didn't take us that long. You know?
So true.
No, he doesn't have the column is not harassed. They don't have enemy forces that fall upon them. And of course, security is always at a heightened level of concern. But they're able to get back across without much incident. The biggest problem is exhaustion, because at this point in time, if you're looking at the early evening of December 26th, it's probably been 48 to 60 hours without sleep for most of these guys at that point in time.
In that cold, though, like their feet have got to be killing them. They have to be. It's got to be like walking with cinder blocks instead of feet.
It's I've done the march a couple of times to do it, and you're grateful that you're done, and then you think about the fact that I actually didn't fight a real battle. I did not have my life in peril, and I don't have to march back again when it's over, because I've done both the river route and I've done the Bear Tavern Road route, which is a little bit longer, where you do the Jacobs Creek Ravine, just to do it. We've done it with some living history stuff before, but no, it's remarkably incredible. The Hessians, I think, are very nervous at first that they're going to be executed, because their commanders have told them that the Americans will show them no mercy. But then when they actually are treated with civility and well, as prisoners of war may go, I think it's a very surprising scenario. Washington even has a meal with some of the captured Hessian officers on December 27th at the McConkey's Ferry House. Lieutenant Andreas Wiederholt, who we talked about earlier, Wiederholt is one of the officers at that dinner that Washington holds, and has a discussion with Washington that he finds to be pleasant. Wiederholt says to Washington at the time, he left some personal effects back in the city of Trenton. He would like parole to go obtain them. And Wiederholt goes and then comes back to serve his time as a POW. Wow. He sticks to his word.
The British are going through New Jersey making enemies out of what could have been good friends, while Washington is making friends out of enemies. Mm-hmm. And maybe he wasn't such a doofus after all. Maybe he wasn't such a doofus after all.
Isn't that an epitaph?
That'll be on my tombstone. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he knew what he was doing.
I was at Old Yeller Meeting House in Cream Ridge, New Jersey.
Old Yeller
Meeting House, which is a Baptist church, 18th century building, and there are a number of 18th and 19th century graves there. And I came across this grave for this guy who was the sheriff of Monmouth County in like the 1870s or 1880s. And it said he did an adequate job.
That's
like, oh my God.
Such an honest.
Terrible. Just terrible. If there was an ability to haunt and come back and go, what asshole put this on my tombstone?
Right.
All
right. we've got questions that were submitted by our patrons over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. And of course, your phone calls and super chats, they're still open to you there. We're going to take a break. We'll come back and take care of all that stuff right after these words.
While we pay the bills, we hope you'll call 717-420-1978 and get in the queue to ask a Gettysburg guide. We'll be right back.
Oh, the ocean waves do roll and the stormy winds do blow.
Yeah, just do the Patreon.
Poor sailors are skipping at the top while the landlubbers lie down below, below, below. While the landlubbers lie down below.
At Digital History Pioneers Foundation, we are about grassroots history on digital platforms. That means we are about podcasters, documentarians, YouTubers, and even TikTokers. All of these creators are out there trying to share their love of history with the public. They don't need ideas, they need funding, both from viewers and corporate donors. DH Pioneers' initial funding focus is on the Civil War era, with a special emphasis on the Addressing Gettysburg podcast. So be a vital part of the unique content Addressing Gettysburg has in store by donating at dhpioneers.com and help bring your love of history to the people. Digital History Pioneers is an IRS Section 501c3 approved charitable corporation that makes any donation tax deductible to the fullest extent of the law.
Right. Now endorsed by a Pulitzer Prize winner. Do you like coffee?
I can't really drink coffee.
Why not? You don't like the taste of it?
No, caffeine.
Oh, I hear you. But you used to drink coffee.
I have drank coffee.
Too bad this wasn't around back in the day when you drank coffee.
Right.
Because you would have enjoyed this. This is our coffee. It's called Little Ground Top. It's roasted right here in Gettysburg at 82 Steinway Avenue, Bantam Roasters. You can go in anytime. You can get a bag whenever you want. Smell that, though, Anna. Isn't that wonderful?
It smells
It does
really
smell
good.
really nice,
Yes,
doesn't it?
It does.
You could just keep a bag of this in your living room just for the smell, right?
Yeah.
But you got to get it ground first. You know, they could do it in whole bean or ground. You can get it ground if you want it for drip coffee or French press, whatever. It's just fantastic. You could also buy it online if you, when you get back home to Pittsburgh and you decide, oh, my friend loves coffee. Oh, I just heard about this Little Ground Top. Well, you go to addressinggettysburg.com/cafe and you can order it there and get it, and you don't ever have to set foot in Gettysburg again. Not that you wouldn't want to, because and not that we don't want you to. We love having you here, so you come back as often as you want. But yeah, Little Ground Top. So 82 Steinway Avenue, Bantam Roasters here in Gettysburg, or addressinggettysburg.com/cafe. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about something that is very exciting, and I just posted a link to it in the comments section if you're watching live. It is, of course, our April 12th show at the Totem Pole Theater. Ladies and gentlemen, of all the things happening in April, this is really the thing. Of course, there's Easter. But other than that, this is really the thing. Well, and there's Passover, I think, is also in April.
There's Good Friday. That's in April.
But other than that, the only thing worth coming to in April is our show at the Totem Pole Theater. It's a live Ask a Gettysburg guide. And we love you so much. We got 3 guides and a historian, if you prefer. Cody Aish is the historian from the Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center. And of course, we have Britt Eisenberg, Kevin Bryant, and our very own friend and dearly beloved Get Out of the Car tour guide, Louis Trott. It's hard to do this off the top of your head. And of course, an audience of thousands, including you. Now, it only holds 300 people, so maybe thousands is an exaggeration, but I think you're going to have a great time. So, what do we need you to do? We need you to click that link there in the chat section there, and if you're watching this on recording, it's in the not the comment section, it's in the description, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have a a thought exercise. I don't know if thought exercise is the right term for it, but nobody knows what to call this thing that we're going to do with the audience. It's going to be a lot of fun. Billy Webster is going to be there as well, and he's going to perform songs from his album Marching Through Georgia, and I think you're going to really like it. And you get to meet a bunch of Gettys nerds. That's the beauty of it all. So we'll see you there April 12th, 2 o'clock, Totem Pole Playhouse.
You didn't get in the phone queue during the break? Come on. What are you, chicken? 717-420-1978 is the number to prove me wrong. Super chats of $10 or more will be read on the air. Here's Matt.
Do the swim. All right, so we're back now, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to get to the questions that our patrons over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg have. Hey, can I tell you a story real quick?
Sure.
My mother called me right before the show. She texted me and she goes, "Can you talk?" And I was like, "Oh my God, what happened?" Somebody says, "Can you talk?" That's scary. So I call her and I'm like, "Hey," and she's like,
"Hello."
And I go, "Is everything okay?" And she's like,
"Yeah, everything's fine. Why?"
I go, "I don't know, because you said, can you talk at 5:30 in the afternoon? Like, that's kind of, scary." And she's like, no.
Oh, she's like, no. So me and Jim.
So, she and her man, Jim, are down in Florida for the month. How nice, right? They're in Florida for the month. And she goes,
And so, we're looking at houses that we might want to rent for next March. And so we see this one house, and, they send you a questionnaire and they send you a video. You do a video call with them. They ask you a bunch of things. They don't tell you the address. They just tell you the area that it's in. And so we decided, well, let's drive through the area there until we see a house that looks like the picture.
And I'm like, Jesus, you got nothing else to do in Florida except stalk these poor people?
So there we are, we're riding along, and then we see the house, and we start to slow down and take a look at it, and then these two people come out of the house, and they get in the golf cart, and they're starting to come out, and we let them go. And Jim says, "Oh, hold on, let me go talk to him." I'm like, "No, don't do that, Jim." And then he gets out, and he goes and talks to him. And so then I get out, and we're talking and everything like that.
Anyway, long story short, without the annoying affected voice. So she gets out, they start talking to the people. Lovely couple from Ireland. Okay. And so they say, "Oh, would you like to come inside?" And I'm not going to try to do a broke. "Okay, would you like to come inside and see the house, since you're asking about it?" And I go, "Oh, sure." So they go inside and everything. And she goes, "And somehow Gettysburg comes up in our conversation." And then it was because they were talking about all the places they visited in the States when they come to the States often. And he mentions Gettysburg and he goes, "Oh, my son lives in Gettysburg." He goes, "Really?" "Yeah." And she goes, "Yeah, he does a podcast down there." He goes, "What's his name?" And she goes, "Matt Calorie." And he goes, "I love him." He goes, "I used to be a patron of his." She goes, "Why used to be?" And I agree.
Indeed.
Anyway, he was all excited. He took a picture with her and he said he would send it to me, but he hasn't done it yet. And he said, "Don't tell Matt I want to send him the picture." And I'm sorry. She beat you to it there, but his name is Colin, and I do remember when he was a patron, and he is greatly missed over there at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. But how weird is that? Somebody on vacation from Ireland is renting the house that my mother was drawn to rent for next year when she's on vacation down there from New Jersey.
Maybe he's your next great muse, Matt. Maybe he's going to fund the program.
Well, we have.
I didn't know your mom sounded like Linda from Bob's Burger.
She just sounds like, she doesn't sound like that at all, to be honest with you. That's just the voice in my head when I think of things she says. It's just for whatever reason registers that way.
That's a wild story. I hope that Colin comes back as a patron.
I do too. It's nice to have international support,
It's international acclaim.
What about Grant?
Acclaim. That's what I'm saying. Well, okay, except for Grant. It's nice. No, it's Grant. It's especially Grant. Grant is a wonderful, Grant and I tease each other, but we're actually we have a very warm, can you call it a friendship when you're never met and you're on two different continents? I don't know.
Yeah. And you hung up on him? I don't know.
But so you are like the only guide that answers the question that we put on the forum at the top of the page here about books that you recommend for the audience, because the audience often wants to know, what can I read about this subject? And so Ken has given us some book recommendations, and I'm going to read them to you right now. Washington's Crossing by David Hackett Fischer. 10 Crucial Days, Washington's Vision for Victory Unfolds by William Kidder. Winning the 10 Crucial Days, The Key to Victory in George Washington's Legendary Winter Campaign by David Price. And The Long Retreat, The Calamitous Defense of New Jersey, 1776 by Arthur S. Lefkowitz. So those are the ones you recommend.
I do.
All right, very good.
The Lefkowitz book is a little bit harder to find. So just so folks know that, the other three should be readily available wherever you purchase your books. And the David Hackett Fischer book is also available as an audiobook as well, if people prefer that.
Wonderful. Robert Ravegna. Sorry, Rob. He says, what was the actual weather on that night? Was it snowing? Okay, so we did that. Temperatures 28, 29 degrees.
28, 29. It's bad.
So it's kind of like a lot of us can relate to this. I think it's pretty good that we're doing this now because I think a lot of us in this area and really around the country, it seems, can relate to that after this winter.
Yep.
I mean, every day was in the 20s and 30s for a good tear there this winter over by us. And I'll tell you, with heat in the house and a fireplace or a wood stove, I still wrapping myself in blankets. I mean, it's probably because I'm old and the circulation isn't what it used to be. But I was still cold in the comfort of my warm, cozy home. These guys are walking in snow and they don't have the insulated boots that we have today or any of the stuff we have to protect ourselves from the cold.
Correct. And you are not old. You're seasoned.
Thank you.
Because you're not that much older than me.
No, I'm not. but you're in much better shape than I am.
Oh, geez,
you run, don't you?
No, but you look good.
Yeah, but you've
trimmed down. You're being a little too coy.
Yeah, but I haven't been working out. I've just been starving myself and...
Note for the audience, Matt looks outstanding, and this is not the guest kissing his ass.
No,
that's true. There's no need for him to kiss my ass.
So
I was showing him
okay.
I guess it can go to me. I showed him a picture of what he looked like over the summer last year, and it's a very noticeable difference.
Yep.
So
yeah, it was disgusting. I'm going to send that picture to Cindy, and I'm going to say, never let me get this fat again. It was gross. Number two, his number two question, Rob's question, did Washington stand while crossing the Delaware like in the painting?
Yes, all factors and evidence would point to yes, because especially in those Durham boats, they're not designed for sitting. They're designed for cargo, right? And if you tried to sit down in those boats or even any of the other ones, really, the way that storm is progressing, you're collecting rain and freezing rain, sleet, snow, hail in the bottom of it. So if you sit down, you're going to have a wet ass.
Yeah.
Like you're going to be soaked.
Yeah.
And it's harder to pack more people into a boat
when
if you're sitting them. So they're standing up.
So they've got to do a great balancing act, these guys.
It's the balancing act would probably be for the folks standing on the prow or the stern of the Durham.
Better bet.
In that slick conditioning because they're working the pole and they're working the tiller.
Oh my God.
So those are the ones doing the balancing act. For the river at that point, because it's not tidal, there aren't waves and the river is not like rushing around and crashing at you.
It's like that flat Delaware
quick
river
flowing Delaware with ice hitting it. So, but all signs point to him standing. Yes.
He also says he's heard that Washington has crossed more than one time. Is that true?
So
Washington himself.
I saw that question, and during the course of the initial Christmas crossing, Christmas night goes over one time. The 26th, he crosses the river again because he has to come back. But then he'll recross the river again when they go to fight Second Trenton later.
Okay.
So, but on the 25th, like if he's talking about the night of the crossing, I've never seen anything that would indicate he went back and forth, shuttled multiple occasions. It was once.
All right. And then this one, I guess he's like Sting. He just goes by Dennis. He said, I heard a rumor that Washington offered American citizenship to every Hessian that surrendered, so he didn't have to put them in a POW camp. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
He does not have an authority or an ability to do that. And what is citizen? I would ask the question, like, what is citizenship at that point in time? Because the Articles of Confederation haven't even been written, and the Constitutional Convention is still 11 years off. Washington does get sometimes, limited powers to do certain things from Congress, but he doesn't have an ability to offer them citizenship. What I think Dennis is getting at is what we talked about before, is the humane and civil treatment of them. Washington has the ability to do that.
Okay.
Yep.
Kerry Schrock says, was it daylight out when the last boats hit New Jersey? Was there a letter to the Hessians that said that Washington that Washington is going to cross the Delaware, or is that folklore? So was there a letter that tipped off the Hessians that Washington was going to do this?
So is it daylight out when the boats hit New Jersey? No, still dark at that point. There is an old myth that on Christmas night, Rawl is playing cards at the Stacy Potts house, and that a civilian comes and hands him a letter, and that Rawl never takes the time to read it, puts it in his coat pocket, and it's found there the next day as they're going through his effects after he's been killed after the Battle of Trenton. I've not seen anything to document that specific instance, but I think that every historical myth has some sort of a kernel of truth and an origin. And I think really the larger question is, was he receiving advance warnings about the perilous nature of his position or the fact that the Americans might attack? And the answer to that question is certainly yes. If we think about what the communications that he gets from General James Grant, who's commanding British forces in New Jersey, that's certainly coming down to Rawl. But when Rawl asks for help from Grant or from von Donop, nobody wants to help the guy out.
Right.
So I think he has a sense of what's coming, or the potential for what's coming.
Another interesting fact that the Stacy Potts of the Stacy Potts house, 4 times great granddaughter Annie Potts.
We have now covered Annie Potts in 2 different historic sites because of the Isaac Potts house. And I don't think Isaac and Stacy and Annie are related in any way.
What a shame.
But I know.
Oh, what a shame.
You know, I wish I damn it, now Meshack Taylor is back. And the Designing Women song is back again. I didn't think we'd get to that. That is too funny.
It just dawned on me. And I was like, wait, I think we made an Annie Potts reference on the last.
You know what? It's going to be a thing. We got to find a way to work Annie Potts into the next shtick that we do.
I used to have a crush on Annie Potts. Cindy Jones, she said, which militia unit from Northampton County, PA were with Washington at the crossing or Valley Forge?
None.
None.
But so it's interesting that she asked that question, though. So
is it
Valley? It is.
Oh,
because there is an interesting little anecdote about a guy from Northampton County that I want to share in a second. But first, Valley Forge, there is no militia stationed at the main Valley Forge encampment. Pennsylvania militia is used on the northern side of the Schuylkill River to serve as a patrolling force. So while there are some Pennsylvania militia units with Ewing, the Northampton County PA militia is not a unit that's designated to cross, and it is not a unit that is going to fight in the First Battle of Trenton, the Second Battle of Trenton, or the Battle of Princeton. But there is a parson, a Presbyterian minister from Northampton County named John Rossborough. And John Rossborough is an ardent patriot who's heavily involved in recruiting men for service in the militia. John Rossborough is is with Ewing at that crossing point, and Rossborough is probably there with Bucks County militia because Bucks and Northampton do border each other. And John Rossborough says something interesting to his wife on December 27th. Because he's going to cross over after the Battle of Trenton and before Second Trenton. And John Rossborough, who's 63 years old at that point in time, says, we are going to New Jersey. You would think it strange to see your husband, an old man riding with a French fusee slung at his back. This may be the last letter you shall receive from your husband. I have counted myself yours and have been enlarged by our mutual love of God. Pray for us, from your loving husband, John. Now, the Second Battle of Trenton is going to be fought in early January, and John Rossborough is there. And David Hackett Fischer tells us that during the course of that action, in the confusion, some Americans were left behind and were caught by the oncoming British and Hessians. One of them was John Rossborough, the elderly Scots Presbyterian chaplain from Northampton County, Pennsylvania. As the Americans fell back through the town, Rossborough was sitting in Trenton's Blazing Star Tavern. The noise of battle increased, and he ran into the street. He found that someone had taken his horse, and he tried to run down the street toward the creek, but was too late. A party of Hessians overtook him and obeyed Colonel von Donop's order. No quarter for rebels. The Hessians made it a game. They took his weapons, stole his money, plundered his watch, stripped off his clothing, and began to torment him with their bayonets. As the chaplain fell on his knees and began to pray, they killed him. Rossborough's naked body was found in an open field with 13 bayonet wounds and many saber cuts to the head.
Jeez. Nice. That's not nice. Rob, another one with the single name like Prince. He says, does Washington write anything about the other prongs of his attack going as planned? Is he upset with his commanders, or does he understand that it was an unfortunate outcome? So I was going to ask you this before. The several crossing points, was that in case one fails that the others might succeed, or were they all supposed to succeed?
They were all hoped to succeed because all had specific missions.
Aha.
I don't think Washington is upset with any of them because the circumstances are more than understandable. The hardest part about that is that there's a lack of real-time communication, so he doesn't have good intelligence and insight, but he doesn't write anything inflammatory or critical about the other prongs not making it over as he had hoped that they might. At the end of the day, the main objective is obtained because he is able to utilize Sullivan's wing of the army to seal off the southern exits of the town of Trenton, and they're very successful in First Trenton.
All right, the great 6 questions. Lance has sent in his usual 6 questions. We covered a lot of them on his phone call and or in the rest of the conversation. There's 2 that I find interesting that we haven't really, but I think we really only have time for one. So okay. I'm gonna ask this one here because we had talked about him before. How and since we've made reference to The Crossing, the film, I think it's important to ask this one. How crucial were John Glover and his men to the overall success of The Crossing? What did Glover and his men do after the Battle of Trenton, and what did they do after the Winter Campaign? So, being a guy who's not a Revolutionary War guy, although the more I talk to you, the more I'm kind of leaning towards becoming one. I don't know of John Glover except for what I saw of him in The Crossing. So my question on top of this question is, well, it's not really a question. You and I were talking before the show started, and you said you don't like the way they portrayed him as the commander of the crossing. There's a whole scene where Washington is with all of his generals and Colonel Glover, and Glover speaks, and then Washington says he's in command. And, from the moment we leave to the moment we land, he is totally in command of the crossing. Yep. And no one will countermand his orders. And that, you said, was not true.
Not at all. First of all, you can be a Civil War guy and a Rev War guy.
I know you can.
So
I'm not like that.
Matt, I encourage you to dip your toe in both waters. I do it all the time.
No, I'm going to because the Civil War, your brain gets smooth after a while because you can't see the forest for the trees. So go ahead.
But Glover, we talked about that in pre-production tonight a little bit, and that's one of the things that really makes me upset about The Crossing.
I like how you call it pre-production, like this is a professional organization.
It is professional.
Okay,
I only align myself with the best.
That's very true. Yeah. Very true.
That scene makes it look like John Glover is in charge of the crossing, and in reality, it's Henry Knox, who Washington puts in overall charge of the crossing and the logistics. It's an interesting question that Mike asks about how important were Glover and his men to the battle of the overall success of the crossing. I would say they're important, but they're no less important than any other unit that was there. Their contributions at the actual crossing over the years, I think, have been overstated in many ways to the disservice of others. There has long been this assumption that Glover was in charge and that the 14th Continentals under his command were the guys that ferried the army across the river. That's being challenged in a lot of ways because there are no orders that ever mention the 14th Continentals being detailed to ferry the army. When Glover dies of hepatitis in 1797, his obituary focuses on his presence at Saratoga and Burgoyne's defeat there as one of the culminating moments of his military career. It makes no mention of the crossing. Early histories of the war by Benson Lossing are absolutely silent on John Glover's role at the crossing, but they talk a lot about the importance of Glover and his Marbleheaders ferrying the Continental Army in the New York campaign of 1776, across the East River to safety. Henry Knox, who we know is in charge, never mentions that Glover or his men are in charge of ferrying the army. In short, there really isn't a shred of primary documentation to indicate that Glover and his men were responsible for ferrying in any way, shape, or form. Does that mean that they didn't assist or that Glover didn't consult because Glover has a maritime background? It's quite possible that those things happen, but I am beginning to think more and more that there are other folks, perhaps Pennsylvania State Navy, local ferry and boatmen who are very familiar with the river. And I got to tell you, that river there, because I've crossed it several times in dorms, it's tricky. If you don't know the ins and outs of the eddies of that river and the shoals, you're going to have a hard time. And that's exacerbated in bad weather. You know, the East River is a big animal compared to the Delaware. McConkey's Ferry is 300 yards.
Right.
And that doesn't mean it's a cakewalk because it's 300 yards, but there are some intricacies to that river. And I don't say that to denigrate Glover. I don't say that to denigrate the 14th Continentals. I say it because if there are other people who were critical to that operation and the light hasn't been shown on them, then I think we need to find out who they are and shine that light. And there's some yet to be published research by a friend of mine being done on that, which I hope is going to come out within the next year or so.
My guess then is that Glover is made that way in the crossing because they wanted to show that Washington's army was made up of a diverse group of people from different backgrounds. I don't mean diverse in appearance. I mean diverse in occupation and ability and everything like that. Because why would you make Knox Chunk and then put Glover in Knox's place if not to say, you know, well, these are maritime guys, but they're fighting in the army.
I have a lot of questions about that film that I cannot answer.
All right, let's leave it alone.
But Mikey also asked us what happened after Princeton with these guys from Glover's. Most of the rank and file of Glover's 14th Marblehead 14th Continental Regiment, their enlistments are up at the end of the year, and they're going to go home. They're going when their enlistment ends, and a lot of them, because they do have experience with commercial fishing and commercial maritime vessels, are going to go into the privateer service. They're going to continue to fight for the cause, but in a different way, and that's a more lucrative way to fight because if you're a privateer, you can get prize money off of captured ships. Glover will go home for a short time to take care of a sick wife. And then he will rejoin the army. He will be at Saratoga. He's at Valley Forge in 1778. And he will spend the remainder of his war service on the Hudson River at West Point and retires in July of 1782, dies of hepatitis in 1797.
Jean Hutchinson said Glover was her favorite character in The Crossing, so this is very eye-opening. Yeah, I liked him too. I thought he was good. I liked
it was a great character. The actor was great. And then, as I said to you, for those super Rev War culture nerds, if you've ever watched the 1984 CBS miniseries about Washington starring Barry Bostwick, the actor who plays General Charles Lee is named John Glover.
Isn't that something?
Little bits of trivia that fill my brain.
And that guy was also in Gremlins too.
He was. He's a good actor, John.
And Scrooged. He's very good, John Glover. I just never knew that was his name. Okay. Peter Zach, he says, did the campaign really change much on the playing field? If so, to what extent? What was the effect that this campaign had on the Crown forces?
Yeah, the campaign has a huge impact. This is a great question. I'm glad Peter asked it. When you look at the 10 crucial days, I don't think and that's going to be 1st Trenton, 2nd Trenton, and then the Battle of Princeton. All 3 American victories. You can't separate. There's the hubcap in the background.
What was that? That was me.
You can't separate it from what happens immediately after Princeton in that we get something called the Forage War, which lasts from early January until the end of March in 1777. And it is in the aftermath of the success of Washington's forces in the 10 crucial days, that rising of the New Jersey militia. The New Jersey militia under Philemon Dickinson and other leaders will begin to hit British outposts throughout the state of New Jersey for the rest of the winter. There are approximately 60 military engagements that are fought between January 4th and March 30th that involve the British being constantly harassed and taking lots and lots of casualties. If you look at the campaign, in sum toto in that fashion and the impact on the British forces that they're going to suffer, it is going to be around 3,000 casualties that Crown forces take with the 3 major battles of the 10 crucial days and the actions in what we call the Forge War combined. If you put that together with their casualties from the New York campaign, which were another 1,500, and all of the men that Howe now has as sick and not fit for duty, from August of 1776 to April of 1777, the effective troop strength of Crown forces in North America is reduced by 50%.
Wow.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
Also, the Americans are going to capture substantial quantities of arms, ammunition, and supplies from Crown forces in New Jersey as well. So it does have a major impact on the Crown. And what it also is going to do is take the American revolutionary cause from that point when the flame is almost extinguished in December of 1777 to a point in the spring of 1777 where William Howe is now convinced that he must fight another major land engagement in order to try to end the rebellion. And of course, he'll focus on Philadelphia in that 1777 campaign. Now, to get from the environs of New York City to Philadelphia, the easiest and most reliable thing, all factors being considered equal, would have been just to march across the state of New Jersey, cross the Delaware at various points and converge on the city. But Howe doesn't do that in 1777. He decides to embark in New York Harbor, go all the way south and come up the Chesapeake Bay and land in Maryland. Right. The reason that Howe isn't taking the march route over New Jersey, which probably would have been quicker, is that he's petrified of what the American militia is going to do to his force coming in through New Jersey. He doesn't want to get torn apart in the cedar swamps, the pine barrens, by the militia and Washington's forces. So he spends all that time at sea to come up and try to take Philadelphia. So there's a big impact on the Crown forces immediately, and there is a big impact on the way that William Howe is thinking about fighting the war. Interestingly, if we want to think about global leaders watching what's happening, Frederick the Great, who is the King of Prussia, says that the achievements of Washington and his little band of compatriots between the 25th of December and the 4th of January, a space of 10 days, were the most brilliant of any recorded in the annals of military achievements. That is coming from the greatest military mind of the 18th century.
Yeah.
Which is pretty wild. And later in the war, if you want to think about impact and how people are looking at this, General Charles Cornwallis, who's fighting in New Jersey in the winter of 1777, a guy who had his leave recalled to help fight against the Continentals, he will also be surrendering a major British army at Yorktown in October of 1781. He is at a dinner with Washington following the surrender and says, as part of a toast to Washington, "When the illustrious part that your excellency has borne in this long and arduous contest becomes a matter of history, fame will gather your brightest laurels rather from the banks of the Delaware than from those of the Chesapeake." Now, for me, looking at that as an historian, a couple of things, like when you look at other British quotes about Trenton and the loss there is a sense of blaming this on the Hessians and blaming this on Rahl, and Rahl can't speak for himself anymore because he's dead.
Right.
And I think, Cornwallis take him a little bit tongue-in-cheek because he's just surrendered an entire army on the banks of the Chesapeake.
Yeah.
But he's pointing back to Rahl and the loss at Trenton as a point in time when there was a hinge in the rebellion. William Howe will talk about it much in the same way. So will Lord George Germain, who's the British Secretary of State for North America. Those people are writing in real time, talking about how this campaign really was a game changer in the war. And even into the late 19th century, British historian George Otto Trevelyan writes about the 10 Crucial Days campaign as a turning point for the war itself, too.
Ken Miller. I was going to call him 10 Questions Ken because, he doesn't have 10, but almost 10. Maybe he does. Anyway, but we're not going to do all 10 of them because a lot of them we already covered. So I'm going to ask a couple of them. One of them is, how do you assess the reliability of primary accounts of George Washington's crossing of the Delaware, especially when many were written after the fact?
Yep.
Like the Gospels.
I would assess them just the same way that I would look at other primary accounts. I mean, you always look at sources, even primary ones, with a critical eye, thinking about what are the biases that an author may have. Who is their intended audience? Are they writing in a way to try to influence that intended audience? What's the origin? Was this significant source when it was created? Has it something that's been translated or altered or edited? And what questions we can answer about the time period by using the source, and if it has limitations. So I think you look at every primary source through a lens, and you try to put evaluative filters on it to pull out the shreds of truth and evidence, which is not always easy to do. But it's not just these primary sources. That's the same way that I would look at any of them.
And what is a small detail about the crossing that most people completely miss but really brings the story to life?
We've had First Trenton, but what about Second Trenton?
That's you keep mentioning it, and I'm like, it's already 10 o'clock.
Yep.
But this is another show.
We can another time for sure. I mean, yes, that's one. But I think, and we did cover this earlier. The right after Trenton thing that I think most people miss is the what next, and we talked about that, Matt. Like, there's the assumption, like, okay, they won. Well, now it's over.
Yeah.
Like, no, what do you actually have to do now that you've won?
Right.
What happens to happen to you immediately? What are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and how do you respond to all of those things in real time? I don't think people think about it holistically. For me, that is the much bigger thing.
Yeah, because the end of the story is, we won, yay! Yeah. Let's bring everything back across the river. And then what? Right. But then what?
Yeah.
The story goes on. It's an 8-year war, right?
Yeah, it's all a continuum.
Good Lord. That's it for the questions, Ken.
Okay.
I believe, let's see. Yep, that's it for the audience, too. They've all abandoned us. There's only 2 viewers left. No, I'm just kidding. We're still doing pretty good. All right, so that's it. What's going on at Valley Forge? It's America250. You're a guide there. Also, You're a guide at Washington's Crossings. Anything that anybody should know if they want to come and visit you?
Yes. So if you are looking for the big living history events to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the 10 Crucial Days, that is going to take place from December 24th to December 27th of 2026. We will be doing small skirmishes on the New Jersey side of the river during the day on December 24th. The crossing of the Delaware on the 25th, and pre-dawn march to the city of Trenton and the battles of Trenton on December 26th, and then the Battle of Princeton on December 27th. So all those things are coming up. Valley Forge, I am certainly open to do tours. If people want to contact me for that, they're welcome to do that. I can schedule that at any time. But the big planning thing right now is for stuff at the end of the year. So looking forward to 10 Crucial Days. And I've got a long range of other stuff going on right now too, but lots of things that are fun.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming and watching us here. Tad, you had a long day today, Tad.
Thanks.
Go home and get some rest. Okay, buddy?
Because we have another one tomorrow.
We have another long day tomorrow. Yeah. And Debbie, thanks for coming by. It's good to see you.
Yeah, hi, Debbie.
And Ken, thank you to you. Ladies and gentlemen, keep your eye open for Ken in the coming weeks. We've got our tavern talk about Valley Forge.
Woo!
It was the last one we filmed, but it's the first one we're putting out. And originally the idea was because this winter was so freaking miserable that we figured people would be able to relate to it. But it's taken us a little longer to get it finished, and the winter's almost over, so maybe people are going to be sick of winter by now. But we beseech you, we entreat you to please give it a look. And I think you're going to like it. It's kind of a new take on lectures. It's the anti-lecture lecture. Also, we started with Ken because even though it's the anti-lecture lecture, Ken is so good that none of us really wanted to converse. And that really is the whole point of these things. Tavern talks. We all talk, we converse, we discuss a given topic with a historian there to kind of help us along. But Ken is just a really engaging speaker, and none of us know anything about the revolution except for maybe 6 questions lens, to the extent where we can really, I think, dive into it. And so we just ended up kind of, At first, we tried to have a big conversation, but after a while, we just kind of fizzled out, and we just listened to Ken talk, and we think you're going to like that too. It's really, it's really a good one.
It's a nice way of saying I don't know when to shut the hell up.
He really doesn't know when to shut the hell up. It was amazing. I was like standing there. I'm like, will you let somebody else speak? For the love of God. No, really, it really was great. And so we think you're going to like that. They're going to come out in the order of appearance in history. So it's...
You mean chronological order?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it that way.
Okay.
So we got Valley Forge is the first one, followed by what? Johann Braun's...
Yep.
Johann Braun in memory. Of course, that is John Brown in memory with Dr. Jennifer Murray. And then after that is going to be Custer and the Battle of the Little Bighorn with Jaime Hessler, which is, of course, James Hessler.
Jimothy.
It's actually Diego in Spanish.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
What is Jaime?
I don't. Jaime is Jaime, but James is Diego.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. Let's change that.
Ooh, never mind.
What?
Nope.
We can't change that?
No, I was just going to say something else. Just keep going.
Well, the one burn you got in already wasn't enough?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Just keep going. Keep going.
And then the final one is airborne operations during D-Day.
Yes.
With Doug Dowd. And all of these are great. All of them are engaging. And two of them, two very controversial people, John Brown and George Custer, man... I mean...
People almost fought.
There were some almost... what was that, Deb?
It got heated.
It got heated a couple times. Veronica cried. Eric Houston almost punched Ralph Siegel.
Ow.
And... Yeah, and it was something else.
Yeah.
It was something else. But Custer and John Brown really get people going to this very day. And so...
that proves why history isn't boring.
It's exactly right. You can see a fist fight at a bar just talking about John Brown. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, it was a lot of fun having Ken in here. It's nice to do something a little different. It's a lot of fun. And of course, it's always great to have you guys in the comments section. Even though I don't read all the comments out loud, I do read what you're saying while he's prattling on about whatever. And we like your calls and your super chats, of course. That helps us get over the... not get over, but defray the cost. Anyway, I got to go to bed. So thank you very much. Thank you, Ken.
Anytime.
Thank you guys in the back. Thank you all for watching. And we'll talk to you next week. I think we have another Ask a Guide. So check you out later.
Addressing Gettysburg's Ask a Gettysburg Guide is produced by Matt Callery, Mikey B. Bariski, and Tad Scase. Hosted by Matt Callery, featuring Mikey B. and Court Liquor. Engineered by Tad Scase. Guests booked by Dave Bussiere of TR Historical. Broadcasting from and recorded at the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios. Thanks for listening.
Instead of small drink down there and pay the reckoning on the bill. No man forget shall go to jail for getting
But a feel.
pay the reckoning on the bill. No man forget shall go to jail for getting
Copyright 2026, Addressing Gettysburg, LLC, all rights reserved.
Bonfire.